Alright, looks like I'm streaming, I think. It says so, maybe. I don't know. Starting? I don't know. Didn't see the little start thing start, so who the hell knows? Anyway, alright, do what I have to do here. Just pop out the chat, blah blah blah. So I can conveniently see it as I'm working. Yeah. And such. Alright, what else do I need? So I have to hit this thing, no doubt. Now to connect this, and I hit this, and then I move this down. Oh, it's not there. Interesting. Didn't work. Oh, that's a little bit irritating. So, the solution is, what's the solution? Oh, I know what I have to do, I think. Alright. There, that fixed it. Okay. What if I get rid of this stupid frickin' community crap thing? No, it doesn't go away. Alright, anyway. It's just sort of in the way. I believe the comments start after that, so maybe I'll just slide that up here. I should be okay. Probably. Yeah. Alright, so first things first. I guess we'll go find the Ian, yes, Gosling, made a video. So he's kind of proven he can handle it. Let me just make sure everything's stream healthy wise. Alright, no viewers. Okay, that's good. Yeah, who wants any of those? Alright, so, yeah, okay, so it's on his iPhone or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. It's not the perfect, but it's a video, he's talking, so he's figured out how to do this now. So now if he wishes to make an argument, he can make a full argument, a complete argument. Now, the problem with this video is it doesn't make any argument relevant to the subject. It's an interesting little factoid, okay, but it's not relevant, meaningful, significant, noteworthy. That would be the word. Yeah, it's not a noteworthy fact. Doesn't change any of the arguments at all. And it's almost like a desperate use of semantics because it really doesn't say anything. Okay, so we'll play it just because that's his first video. And we should celebrate it every way we can. And thank you. Good, thank you. I appreciate you making a video. Alright, so yeah, that looks okay. So let's play it. So it's just a lever.
This
okay.
Is a rotor.
Alright. So the sound is a little low.
On either end, same weight. It balances because it's got a bearing in there. Quite friction free.
But it's close enough.
Nice. And it does balance.
Yeah, it's very good. It balances any way I can figure it as long as I have the commensurate rate weights on it. So we already know that. We already know that a regular, you know, the lady holding the scales of justice, you know, the scales, the baskets are way below the bar. And that doesn't mean it isn't a balance. It is a balance, and it's even more sensitive as a balance with the weights below the bar. So it has nothing to do with the word balance. But you're obsessing about the word balance, okay? I don't know what to say. It's really a it's a category error. Yeah, that's what it is. You're making a category error. It isn't about balance. Okay, it's not about whether something. It's about the fact that if you actually did these experiments, so you can notice he does have a little hole right here, you know, at half the distance presumably, and so you could almost get the sense that maybe he's already done the experiment that I've actually suggested, and actually had to acknowledge, you know, how it actually works.
And it's very, very sensitive. Very sensitive. For instance.
So you're saying basically it's a stick, okay? You don't need the weights technically, because what you're doing is basically putting all the mass on the same line. All the center of mass is on the same line. And it shouldn't need even weights to display what you're displaying, which is sort of meaningless. Because the whole point is you want to use the lever to do a conversion. You don't want to use the lever in some other way. It's like when a regular scale, you know, one of those real tall scales is used, the whole idea is to make the big lever you would have to create to do a balance for a 150-pound weighted person, where you'd have to put 150 pounds on one side of the lever to balance. You don't want to do that. You want to put 10 pounds on one side and balance the 100 pounds. You want to find a ratio to do the balance with instead of real weight to do the balance with.
I put a tiny little thin washer, about half a mil thick, on there.
So what can be observed is the guy has tools. It looks like he does a lot of plumbing because there's a lot of plumbing style tools. But anyway, he's got himself a little working area. Okay, so you know, all this talk about who should be doing experiments, you could just argue, why haven't you done them?
And then it doesn't balance. That's just to give you an indication of how sensitive this thing is. Now, once the balance...
Right, so it wouldn't matter whether it was whether I had the weights above or below. If I put more weight per distance, if I have a different balance of the center of mass's distance from the fulcrum, I will in fact cause the balance to unbalance and do what that washer did. So again, unremarkable.
It tends to balance in any position.
Right, okay, so this is interesting, you know, that you can make the stick that, you know, gravity is going to change whether if I put this weight, so if I put both these weights above the bar, it won't do this. If I put both these weights below the bar, it won't do this. Now obviously if I put one below and one above, then I'm changing the weights and it won't balance anyway. But again, unremarkable.
So sensitive.
Well, it's only sensitive too in the distance you put it. See, he's put the balance past 45 degrees. And that's the point where, you know, the balance is going to be unbalanced. Gravity's not going to affect the one with the short angle as much as it's going to affect the one with the tight angle. So he's kind of put too much angular change in the lever for it to go back to level. Because from the lever's perspective, these weights aren't even anymore in terms of their distance from the center.
But
in the gravity.
Only balances when the center of mass of both of these weights is in line with the axis of rotation.
So it's just not true. It will balance with the weights well below or well above. It will balance. Okay, so it will accomplish the task of comparing the weights on the two sides and saying whether you have the same weight on both sides or not. And weight would be distance or motion, okay, per time. And so clearly I could put a 1 mass weight far out. I could put a 2 mass weight half the distance on the other side. It will in fact balance, and it will in fact oscillate if I put energy in. Now if I put too much energy in, then I will swing it in a circle. That is a possibility.
It won't balance if the center of mass...
See, it will balance.
...is dropped below the axis of rotation. Now it's not a balance. Even though...
So it keeps moving it in. Okay, but what you're going to see is that ideally these weights should be free, and then they won't have a problem of changing their center of mass ratio to the lever. So if you allow them to swing or hang, then their mass ratios never change. But if they're stuck curving, then that will change them.
So it's balanced. It will balance like that. Yes, it will balance horizontally.
Right, so you're saying the word balance, you're conceding it will balance, so there's no point in saying it won't balance when, of course, it will balance.
But any displacement.
Right, any displacement will cause an equal and opposite reaction displacement, because any displacement is going to create a gravitational inequity that the lever will notice and react to.
Will cause oscillation. It acts as a pendulum.
So it's not really acting as a pendulum. I mean, the principle is pretty much fundamentally different because the energy in the two sides are completely inverse. But they're real energy. It's real transfer of energy from one side to the other side, where the pendulum, it's all going one way or it's all going this way. In the lever, half the energy is going this way, half the energy is going that way. One side is accelerating as the other side is decelerating. There's no two sides to a pendulum.
It will only balance in this horizontal position. Any displacement, and it won't balance.
Right, so this has absolutely no relevance to me, who did this experiment already. It's already demonstrated exactly, it oscillates perfectly. Something one distance away from the fulcrum has a velocity of 1, and something 2 distances from the fulcrum has a velocity of 2. Twice the velocity.
The center of mass is now below the axis of rotation. If we put it back, and this is very sensitive, so it might not be, but it'll give you an idea. It will tend to want to balance.
So I guess I don't think it tends to want to, unless you really do start to tip it, because then the forces, the fulcrum has a real hard friction in one direction, so it doesn't tend to move because there's more resistance to the movement. But all the arguments that could be made about why this one configuration behaves slightly different than the up or down configuration is completely meaningless to the conversation about whether in the other configuration it functions as a balance. It will compare two weights and it will convert weights.
The position you put it.
Convert masses. It will convert momentum is the point. The lever converts momentum. So that was it. There was no point here, I'm strictly speaking.
The weights below the axis of rotation. Now it's a pendulum.
It's not a pendulum. I mean, it's just technically not a pendulum, right? Because it's all the energy isn't on one side then the other side. You're not completely reversing the directions. All the energy on one side, all the energy on the other side. The lever has half the energy on one side, half the energy on the one side. I mean, it's doing the conversion right there in front of your face. Through the whole arc, energy is being transferred from one side. You can just watch it. We have to say it has a 100% and it goes to 90, 80, 70, 60. And the other side goes 10, 20, 30, 40. Through the whole process, there is energy conversion, except when it stops moving. That one little moment. But it has nothing to do with pendulums. They're all different kinds of oscillators. Because pendulums and levers oscillate does not mean they're the same thing. And you could use the same word to describe them. They're different things. And some people would argue that pendulums are levers, rather than people arguing that levers are pendulums. Alright, so good enough. So in the future, hopefully he'll make more videos, and then he'll be able to articulate his points without the necessity to harp at me about giving him comment space to insult me and support rude and obnoxious assholes. So we'll see what he does with his public channel and his public opportunity to speak his mind. And we'll scrutinize him, okay, with the same manners that he scrutinizes others. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. All right, we'll try to give him what he gives. All right. He gives some respect, I'll give some respect. But otherwise, if he's just going to, I don't know what, like, again, it's fine. He doesn't sit there and say, this video proves something. It says, showing an oscillation depends on the center of mass of the weights. So what? We're talking about whether it works as a scale in any configuration. In any configuration, it works as a scale, and it also works as a lever, a converter. So even when he has the weight displaced through the center line, which means that the lever, in a sense, doesn't have any weight on it. The two sides are the same. It wouldn't matter if I pushed actual weight into one side and I had a weight waiting on the other side to be hit. It would still do the mechanical momentum conversion. It's just as good a momentum converter whether you hide the weights by putting them right on the center, or you don't hide the weights and not put them on the center. It still does exactly the same conversions. And that's all he says. Okay. So, done with that. Alright, so I thought I would illustrate another example of a lever. Here we can see there's some comments. Yeah, just see if I could see them. Why is energy conserved? These are stupid questions. I'm sorry, I don't want to insult you, but that's like saying, why are there electrons, or why is there a speed of light? Go ask God, okay? It's the configuration of the universe. It's just the way it is. Now you can sort of understand why it sort of makes sense that the universe doesn't just poof something called energy, because it would look entirely different if it poofed it, okay? So it just looks like everything we test, they've even taken living organisms and reduced them, through decomposition into gases, and then even, burning them, and extracted whatever energy you could extract out of them, through a process of decomposition. And it always works out that the energy is always the same amount. There's no more and there's no less. So it just is. Your cat is falling over. It's not a cat, but whatever. I don't know what you mean. It's falling over. It's close enough. It's pretty much right there. Very good explanation. Thanks. I don't know what you was thinking before, but whatever. Hey Gary, yeah, I really don't, whatever. Hey, whatever. Oats to you too. Why isn't mass conserved then? I'm just arguing. Why would mass be conserved? And I'm just arguing, can you show me an example where the mass isn't conserved? Like, can you show me some example where momentum's conserved, that is the m plus the v, but you don't conserve. The energy moves from one object to another. The mass is what's being pushed by the velocity, the force that's pushing the velocity. So the force is conserved, but the mass can't be conserved, because you could have, you apply 10 pounds of pressure to something that weighs 1 pound. The momentum's going to be conserved, and then I apply the same pressure to something that weighs 10 pounds. It'll go 10 times slower. So, but I don't know what you mean by something where mass. Where do you think the decay is going? Where do you think the decay products are? The decay products are the original thing's mass. The weight of the electrons and protons, okay, is something's weight. There isn't anything else. There's just electrons and protons. And you can never make more of them or make less of them. So, frankly, and there isn't any experiment that demonstrates where you violate momentum, conservation of momentum, or in effect, the conservation, you can't destroy the matter. All you can do is take its energy away. The matter doesn't change. The energy, what pieces of matter have the energy changes, but the matter doesn't change. Say if the energy was just sitting there, it was going to hit two things, the car in your driveway or your house. Or you were going to convert the energy that was in your house into your car. You could understand that, yes, if the car has the energy, it goes 50 miles an hour. If the house has the energy, it goes 1 mile an hour. You know, that kind of thing. You can understand. But the matter isn't energy. It carries the energy. It holds it. It possesses it. Alright, anyway. The mass of hydrogen atom doesn't equal the mass of proton and electron. Well, again, you can say it doesn't. I'm arguing that any experiment shows differently is because they've used 1/2 mv squared and fucked it up. Okay, they don't know what the mass of the electron is. They've gotten the wrong weight for an electron. When uranium decays, it decays products don't equal the uranium's mass. So again, what is your authority for that? 1/2 mv squared. If you don't use the wrong formula, you won't get the wrong answer. So if you use the right formula, the electron weighs thousands of times more than they think it weighs. Okay, it's just a fact. Because they've used the wrong formula to decide its mass. Alright. I mean, I can show you that clip of that experiment and just show you where they're using the wrong formula. They're saying, this is how fast the electron's going. It has a certain amount of energy. Okay, you can measure how much energy it has. So they have the velocity and they have the output momentum it creates. And they're deducing the mass based on the fact that they have a velocity number. Now, if they're squaring that velocity, you can sort of understand that the mass number has to go way down because they're squaring the velocity as the component in the energy. So they have an idiotic understanding of its velocity importance, and they've undervalued the mass's importance significantly. Alright. So, back to what I was doing. Let's see. So these should put this where it will scroll to the newest message. So I have to go there, I guess. Alright. Let's see. What do you think the mass of the electron and proton are? I don't really care, but let's just say one of them we have right. So as we say protons weigh 10 pounds, then I would argue that electrons probably weigh something like 1 pound. So electrons are lighter by maybe 10 magnitudes, but it's not 1,000 or 2,000 magnitudes. But I haven't figured it out yet. I mean, I haven't bothered to, put everything back in momentum terms and I mean, I could go back to their experiments and just put them in terms of momentum and then see what their answers would be. But I'm not all that confident they understand what they're really measuring. When they're measuring an effect, I'm not sure they're actually measuring electrons. How do you know an electron is lighter? I'm telling you it's lighter just because that's how all of the photoelectric and magnetic effects and charge effects work. Electrons have to be very mobile. Protons are not mobile. That's why they're in the nucleus, is because they move slower. They're heavier. It takes more energy to move a proton. That's why the protons are a lot more stable, and that's why they're stuck in the nucleus. It's kind of a simple deduction. I'm not saying I've proven it. I'm saying you can deduce it from the circumstances that work in the real world. Alright, what do you think the mass of the electron and proton... Oh, we already did it. How do you know an electron is lighter? Oh, yeah, it didn't change anything. I don't know why it scrolled. But anyway, alright, back to my agenda. Alright, so I need this to be ahead of that. It's not ahead of this, so I gotta get this out of the way. Alright. So I thought of another way of explaining how the impossibility of the 1/2 mv squared. So for Nancy and others who apparently haven't been really following along, and this is their first impression. Newton believed in mv, and that was energy. That's all you needed. You didn't need to do anything else. That was more than enough. That took care of it, blah, 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 blah. And this nutball Leibniz came around. He believed in mv squared, because he just thought gravity, was about how much distance you went in gravity, and it wasn't about how much time you were in gravity. And they added the 1/2 later. So this was these were two competing theories. And in the 1700s, they had a second battle. The first battle, MV won. Newton was buried to God. Descartes, Galileo all had great reputations. This won. After Newton's death and Leibniz's death, they dug this bullshit up. They redid the contest, and they sort of just faked this victory. It was sort of like the Bohr-Einstein debate, in the sense that Bohr totally lost the debate over entanglement, and somehow everybody says Bohr won, when no, he totally lost. But anyway, and so the fake thing won for no good reason, and it became just, everybody just accepted it without ever thinking about, well, did we ever prove it? So it says things like it takes 4 times more energy to go twice as fast. So even though no race car driver thinks so, it says that 8-pound bowling ball going twice as fast as a 16-pound ball knocks down twice as many pins, has twice as much energy available for knocking down pins. No professional bowler can see that as true. So anyway, it doesn't work. All right, but here's the reason. All right, here's the undeniable paradox it creates. All right, so there's something you're going to just have to accept as a truth. Okay, I'm going to tell you that if you want to double something's weight in gravity, you pick it off the ground 1 centimeter. Okay, so at 1 centimeter, and you let it go onto a scale, you let it hit the scale. Okay, so I'm going to lift it 1 centimeter above the scale right here. So we'll call that 1 centimeter. All right, we'll say this is the scale, and we'll say this is the level. Okay, the scale is in the ground, so not to confuse anybody, and it's just a spring, and it does what springs do, which is measure weight. So I take it to 1 centimeter, so I have a mass of a one object. All right, and I'm just gonna drop it 1 centimeter onto the scale. Okay. Now the argument is if I go 4 times higher, all right, that is, here's 1 centimeter, so I go 2, 3, 4. So I go up here, so 4 centimeters higher. All right, 4 centimeters higher than this one, actually. Yeah, let's get that right. So I go 4 centimeters above this height, and then I drop it. This will weigh on the scale, so this will weigh, say, 1 pound if I drop it this 1 centimeter. So let's understand, it's just dropping 1 centimeter. And now if I take it 4 times higher than this height, we know it goes twice as fast. I know from doing the experiment it will weigh twice as much. So this will weigh 2 pounds. So I lifted it all this way up, 4 units of distance up. All right, I went 4 distances up. And I've made something weigh 2 pounds. So it weighs 2 pounds. Because one object dropped weighs 1 pound, 2 objects dropped will weigh 2 pounds. And this one will weigh 2 pounds because it only doubles this weight. So you can sort of, maybe you already see where I'm going. The trick is I could just take 2 ones and I could just lift them 1 centimeter, put them up here, and I have 2 pounds of weight. So I've achieved the same exact compression of the spring. I compressed the spring exactly the same amount by just lifting 2 ones 1 centimeter. Now you have to admit it would be more work for me to lift one mass 4 centimeters. That's got to be a lot more work to lift this one 4 times higher than that height. So how could it possibly be true, right? How could you have a cheat? How can I have that and this be the same energy? Because that means I'm essentially making free energy because I don't have to do the work I'm getting back. I'm getting 2 pounds of pressure, but I'm only doing 1 pound of work. by your theory. Only 2 units of distance up into gravity. I only had to lift things 2 units of distance in the gravity, and I got the same amount of energy that if I lifted it 4 units of distance. So I had to lift this 4. I only have to lift 2 ones, 2, to do the same thing. I just have to lift the 2 twos 1 distance, and I can create exactly the same spring compression. So, the end. So it's just me saying this in some better, I did this brilliantly articulated because this is the first time I've made this argument. But it's clearly obvious that all I'm doing, by moving these 2, I'm just doing this much work. 2 units, 2 distances. And by dropping this, I have to do 4 units of work to get it up here. So how can those 2 things be the same energy? It's not possible. And the rational argument is it's the same time. It's always about time. How much time does it take for you to put the object into position? That's deciding how much work you have to do. And that's it. It's how much time something falls in gravity will decide how much impact it has. And the fact is, 4 times the distance, only twice the time. Twice the time, twice the weight. What was the other? Twice the thing. Oh, shit. Twice the velocity. There we go. Alright, so 4 times the height, and all I get is twice the time. It only takes twice as long. It only produces twice the velocity, and it only produces twice the weight. Isn't that the end of the conversation? Don't these 2's trump the one silly little visual 4? Because you can understand that it's like a paint sprayer. That it's the amount of time you're in the spray will decide how much paint hits you. And that's what gravity is basically showing to you. It's showing you that it's about how long you're in the gravity. The gravity is spraying the mass on you. It's spraying energy, momentum onto you, velocity. And as it sprays the velocity onto you, that's how you gain your weight. It's about how long you're free falling in the gravity. It's an irrefutable argument. The fact is, it was made 350 years ago. They didn't draw it. That was a problem. They exchanged it in letters, so it gets a little complicated for somebody to say this in without any visuals, right? But these arguments against the kinetic energy formula were made 350 years ago, and there was no rational response. There was no rational counter-argument. So, that's what you need to explain, are those kind of circumstances. You need to explain how, if I did put a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour into one side of the lever, one distance from the fulcrum, and then I put a 5-ton train 2 distances away, not moving, that when the 10-ton train came in, it's going to make the 5-ton train go twice as fast. And I will, in fact, make free energy by your kinetic energy theory. You need to explain how the lever won't do that. Yeah, I think that's well enough said. All right, we'll slide that out of the way. That'll be easier. All right, let's see if we got any new comments. Let's see. Nothing there. All right. Didn't Einstein formula all the EM assuming that the positive charge was the carrier of the electric force? Who cares? Didn't Edison? But Edison postulated. Edison wasn't much of a physics theorist, to tell you the truth. All right, he was the perspiration guy. Okay, he wasn't much of the inspiration guy. He tried everything, did everything, he forced things to work. He found a little connection between something, and he just kept trying to amplify it. I mean, he really did invent the telephone too, in a sense, because he's the one who made decent microphones. So, but whatever. I mean, these people, they didn't have a real good understanding of electricity, frankly. Okay, they still don't, I would argue. Physics is still quite clueless. All right. Are you talking about mass or weight? I think I've clearly made the distinction. Okay, mass has no energy until you move it. It doesn't have any weight until you move it. You have no weight. Okay, mass doesn't weigh anything. All your weight is a measurement of momentum. The gravity pushes you into the earth. You don't feel it because it pushes you quite evenly. It doesn't push your head more than your ass. But the earth does, in fact, push back, and it pushes your ass more than your head. So you do feel it. So you're constantly being pushed into the earth and constantly being pushed back up by the earth. So you have momentum, and that momentum is your weight. Gravity was the first mover, okay? It was the first cause, and you just keep remeasuring that first cause with a spring. All right. Right, it's like if you dropped a coin from a tall building. It's not a good example because coins have all kinds of weird aerodynamics. And they, in fact, because of their uneven mass, they won't fly straight. So I guess if you can make their mass perfectly even, spherical and all that, they will actually go on edge, but otherwise they won't. And they end up going flat. So they end up creating a ton of air resistance. And dropped it on a person versus dropping it from 1 inch from them. Right. It's like if you dropped a coin from a tall building and dropped it on a person versus dropping it 1 inch from them. How can you say it's the same energy? You didn't pay any attention. Oh, okay. We're not talking about dropping it from a tall building. We're talking about dropping it from 4 times higher. So if you want to convert that into, it's like dropping the penny from 2 stories up and then dropping the penny from 10 stories up. Well, that still wouldn't be the right ratio, so it's 8 stories. So it would be 2 and 8. Those would be the differences. And the fact is when you drop it from the 8 and there's no air resistance, it only falls in the gravity twice as long. That's all. So even though it's 6 more stories it's falling, it's only taking, okay, a certain amount of time. So the fact is when a meteor comes into your Earth or something like that, it's a tiny amount of time in the gravity, and so the amount of extra energy the meteor gets from the Earth is meaningless. The real energy was what it brought, what got it to the Earth in the first place. That's its real velocity. Well, let's see. What time are you going to make this video again tomorrow? Who the fuck knows? I don't necessarily make it tomorrow. So, yeah. I probably won't make another live. I'll probably do live videos every 2 days or something like that. Anyway. So, go ahead. Get going. Sorry, I can't give you a better time scale. I have no idea. It just depends on how my days go. Stuff happens, blah, blah, blah. And, that's how it's going to be. Can't say. Life gets kind of difficult as you get older. Anyway. Good. Okay. Bye. Thank you. Blah, blah, blah. Love you. People are funny. In a tragically horrid way. Somebody's retracting messages. It's not a very good thing to do. But anyway. Yeah. Keep trying. Alright, I guess I should have a plan B since I already did the Ryan Gosling thing. And yeah, I didn't really want to get in entanglement stores, so I have a couple of links to entanglement stuff that is kind of curious. I really don't want to do that subject. I have to think if there's another force energy thing. Let's see. Well, let's see how many people are here, and then I'll decide. See if there's enough energy in you people to keep things going. Whether there isn't. Let's see. 11. Yeah, that's not a very good number. Alright. Well, we can always go to... Let's see. Is that the guy I want? I don't think so. No. That's some other crazy kook. Alright, sorry. High school teacher or something. Oh, comments. Yeah, I could do comments. Alright, maybe I'll do that. Some guy left a couple of comments. Just kind of strange. I think they're strange. Anyway. Let's see what's showing here. Yeah, that's okay. Alright. Is there a topic related to infinity in physics? Infinity and beyond! Alright, go talk to the Hillsters. You know, they're into all that infinite universe crap. Alright, okay, my example wasn't good. Try to understand physics more. Okay. Trying. It's good. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your pause. Think better. That's good. Always a little extra time never hurts. There's been a few times I've said things a little bit too expediently and short and too simple, and I've regretted it. So you do have to be careful, but you have to also get something done. So you always do have to draw a line somewhere and says, you know, that's enough. Time to go public. Oh, well, that's something I could do too. Maybe I'll show you some of the simulation stuff. I was hoping to have another update today, but it didn't get its second update today. But it really is looking so pretty. Yeah, I have to say I really like it. All right, let me put these trail things on, and then it starts to get interesting. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. And then we'll speed it up a few 100 million miles. But you know, the behavior gets it's duplicating like parameciums. So it's a little bit, you know, it has a little bit of lag in it. And so the lag means that, you know, they're swirling around, they do some weird ass shit. That eventually, I think that's just a bug, and that'll be worked out. Is it's really hard to get the pressure balance exactly right. You know, how much universe, you know, pressure, get it even, because it always has to be even, the external pressure. So all of that's a little bit tricky. But they definitely do this pairing up. The red and the blue ones usually always pair, and then they can have a threesome and do their little thing. So there's probably some setting here I have to change. I don't know why that number is where it is. It shouldn't be there. Yeah. It's strange. Okay. See, so, you know, when it initially starts, it's a little bit too... See, so this is a little more force. You can see that there's a real tendency to keep them together, and they'll just keep interacting. Let me see if you can see any of that. Yeah, you can see it pretty good. But it's pretty cool, huh? Cool. Yeah. And I've barely played with it, so there's got to be lots of different effects I can produce by changing the relationship between the masses. So in this version, I don't think the proton has been weighted, so I don't think it's substantially heavier than the electron. And so that's probably causing a lot of this motion too. But what I've been arguing, see, when they're lined up red, blue, red, that's essentially a deuteron. Okay, it actually is a word in physics. And that's the thing that gives physical objects motion. That's why things move, is because those objects can get through the drag of space. Those objects can move through the space because the fact is they're negating the force against them, because they're always doing a force conversion between them. The red object is creating a force the blue object can't see, and the blue object is creating a force the red object can't see. So it's essentially negating, okay, the force it's running into, which is kind of an interesting concept. But I'm just saying, the rules are so, it's just two rules here, okay? Essentially, there's, the interactions are dictated by such a simple rule. The red bits turn to blue when they go through a red bit. They turn red. So when a blue bit hits a red bit, it goes through it and then changes to a blue bit. And the other interaction is just the typical momentum one, where you just either add energy or reflect energy. So if you hit it when it's in the direction it's going, if a red bit hits the red object in the direction it's going, it adds energy. If it hits it in an opposing direction, it subtracts energy. It's that simple. And those two simple rules create this. Yeah. I mean, this is, you can just say, okay, these are dipoles being created. You can just watch this create dipoles. And look at the little burst of energy. When certain things happen, you'll see little flares and whatnot. These flares are actually being caused by one of the things that has to be edited out, which is the fact that the force bits have a timed life, and certain ones have been in simulation a certain amount of time. They have to be replaced because they are going to terminate, so they have to be recycled. But whatever, I don't want to get into complexities like that. I don't know shit about the programming code, but yeah, cool. It impresses me, so it doesn't have to impress you, but it does impress me. Alright, so I need the chat window again. Alright. No, there's no other comments. Okay. Comments, yeah, that's where I was. So, pretty cool. I like it. Oh yeah, I moved this, so I'll move it back. That'll fix that. But yeah, it looks alive. For that little tiny bit of code in there. It just makes this whole Wolfram argument. You just take these tiny little bits of information and give them enough time, and you could imagine these three little blobs could, paint a Rembrandt. It's the million monkey arguments typing Shakespeare. You can just see it happening. Just depending on configurations, and you can just say, oh yeah, and after a zillion little interactions, they're going to be in position 946, and when they're in that position, you can make them all go off in 3 different directions, and blah blah blah, and this will happen. So you can just see how there's all kinds of probabilities built into all the bazillion of different permutations that can be created. The difference in the environment. Just change one little blue bit, just change one little orange bit, and you have a different outcome. Anyway, okay, enough of that. Comments are here. Alright, so this guy says he's a high school physics teacher. So, okay, that might be believable. I don't know. You wonder, how much you're allowed to be a person on the internet if you're actually a high school teacher, because you can't have the students find your channel, and then if you have a bunch of crap on it, it's just too. I imagine that would be terribly awkward for the school. So I'm not saying I doubt you, and I'm not saying you don't work at a liberal school that allows for that. I just have a feeling like it was something you'd have to get approved, and you'd have to, have to be very careful about what you were saying online. But maybe now it doesn't matter. You have all this, people are allowed to be almost any kind of whack job and still be a teacher. So anyway, alright, so he says, I'm a high school physics teacher. In most cases, teachers aren't really specialists. They just pick a subject and end up, teaching it, but whatever. I'd love to have you lecture my class about mv squared being wrong. So, it's yeah, it's hard to take that exactly seriously, but let's just say, okay. I mean, I think it's a lecture you could do. See, that's the part that's kind of funny, right? I mean, you could take one of those videos I made about the history, and you could just mimic it. You could just take the points I made in it, and you could just teach it. So why would you need me to make the lecture? Because it's something you could understand, that, yeah, it was all invented by a guy who was kind of wacky, kind of a loose cannon in physics, said a lot of crazy stuff that can't be understood, believed in solitons and monads, blah, blah, blah. And you could just point out how nobody bought it, all right, and that there was all kinds of politics because he basically was accused of stealing from Newton, and that's not a nice thing to do, and all that kind of crap. And then you could go into the after what happened, where a woman who technically wasn't a physicist, she had private tutors, she didn't go to college, and she was tutored by a devotee of Leibniz, a guy who was a follower of the now dead Leibniz. So clearly she was tutored with a bit of a bias. Yeah. And, so you can find all kinds of reason why this bad idea just got lucky. It really wasn't. It didn't earn. 1/2 mv squared didn't earn it. Okay, it got there through just bizarrely silly circumstances. Anyway, and yeah, high school students should know that they haven't proven this at all. I mean, they won't do the experiments. They won't show you it taking 4 times more fuel to go twice as fast. They won't show the 8-pound bowling ball knocking down more pins. They won't show the bullets knocking down buildings more efficiently than, cement balls. They won't do any of this stuff. Anyway, I agree. I'd also like to debate you on gravity being fundamentally constant. Well, I think it's a silly thing to debate me on when my argument is it's constant from minute to minute. It's probably constant from, million year to million year. But I've actually argued that it's probably not constant over hundreds of millions of years. That it slightly changes. As galaxies lose their energy to the field gets more pressurized, and therefore the field pushes the galaxies and contracts them again, so that the galaxies are in fact oscillating over billions of years of time. They go from being big to going small to going big to going small, because the energy goes from being trapped inside the galaxy to being liberated and in the environment to push. But yeah, fine. You want to debate something? Fine. You initiate a debate, okay, by making I have video upon video. You just make a counter argument. Now you can make it in text or you can make a video, but I don't even know what you mean. I'd also like to debate you. Yes, well, let's do that. So pick a method of debate and debate me. All right. This is all bullshit. So this is the same video. The universe consists of only 2 fundamental particles, positive and negative. Yes, that's pretty much what I'm arguing, that those are the 2 matter components, electrons and protons. Everything is how they play off each other to infinity. So whatever, you really are a to infinity and beyond kind of guy. I mean, who cares? To infinity. What does infinity have to do with it? How is it relevant? How would a gazillion years ago make any difference versus a gazillion years from now? Why does it matter whether it's a gazillion years or only 5 years or 5 gazillion zillion years or gazillion squared years? Who cares? It trips me out. See, this kind of rhetoric just makes me think, school teacher? I don't know. I mean, you think you would know that you're really not allowed to do this trip me out stuff, and you'll call your students little dude. Hey, duder! That you have to somehow, try to do the maturate your students into sensible culture. And so you kind of want to do that by making them speak decent enough English, not be a bunch of slangers, lazy, use, more precise language. These are all things you should encourage in children. I mean, it seems somebody would have made that speech to you as a teacher, that you have this responsibility to our civilization to try to give your students some sense of their obligation to their society, and their, that it's just even polite to speak the common language, and all that kind of crap. But whatever. It trips me out how stupid people talk about relativity. Okay, well, these are very general and unspecific complaints. So, it's very hard to endorse them or to argue against them, because you really do have to say, Sean Carroll pisses me off with all this made-up crap about multiverses or something. You have to be a little more specific. Alright, talks about relativity, and people like you debunk it but still believe in Newton. I don't believe in Newton. I believe in momentum. And so did Descartes and Galileo, again. And for damn good reason. They got right answers using momentum as the foundations of energy. They all they had back then was the idea of something called quantity of force, and they called it momentum. I mean, they measured it in foot-pounds. They thought of it as weight. So pressure and weight were energy. And I think that's a perfectly sensible way to understand the universe. That mass moving, is energy. And force, gravity, electromagnetic radiation, light, and heat, and all these things are all just about masses moving. Alright, that's it. Not much in the comments section, unfortunately. People are a little thin on conversation. That's the spin in only one direction thing. Yeah. What the hell? Couldn't make much sense out of that. Alright, so we're done with comments. So we'll go back to trying to find the other video that might be worth talking about, which I think was here. Somebody sent me this just as a kind of a joke. So it's another guy just trying to make things simple and blah blah blah, but it really doesn't. It's just kind of unfair to the complexities of all the subjects about what the forces are, and what the forces are a manifestation of, and understanding, the four forces as they call them, which is missing gravity, right? Gravity is not one of their fundamental forces. Well, not in any kind of rational sense as a real thing. Alright, so I have to see if there's any other comments. Alright, let's see. Is there any... Okay, no, we already did that. High school teachers want to act like they are cool and hip with their students. Yeah, I just don't think parents necessarily would want that, but who knows? To some extent I can see how, I haven't been to a school to see how people behave in schools now, so you can see the byproduct, and you can say, yeah, kids are morons, so the teachers just really suck. But but I guess to some extent, it's just one of those things that just oscillates. I mean, I can remember in the 70s, we had a school newspaper, and they called it the High Times, and we had a smoking lounge, where you could go smoke cigarettes, but we all smoked pot, so yeah, they got liberal, and whether that was good or bad, who knows? I mean, I did enjoy it, I have to say, that kind of freedom. And so we had a few hippie kind of teachers back in the 70s, and they weren't stifled, but they also were kind of, you got to speak English, and they were literate, and they pushed, the classics, and they weren't just they weren't slaves to beatnik culture or something. They didn't embrace the dude life, or whatever you want to call that. Laziness, even if you want to just call it that. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, I guess I tend to think that it's nice to be a human being and to make a kid think you're interested in their welfare and interested in their future and interested in helping them and interested in understanding their problems. All that's nice, but I mean, you really do have to do this teaching thing, and you really have to make it important to the kid you're teaching it to. You have to give them some sense that, hey, I'm horny for this, and I'm going to show you why I am, okay? And I'm going to make you feel the same way I feel about it. And that's part of being a good teacher, I guess, is you have to give the kid some sense that, yeah, I was where you was, okay? Yeah, well, you didn't care, and you thought you were only going to live to be 25. But no, it doesn't turn out that way. You end up being 45 someday, and you're saying, what the hell am I doing? Something like that. I mean, it's one thing to identify, but you really do have to try to encourage people to be their best, not their laziest. I guess it's one way of saying what I'm trying to say. I mean, I've learned so much more by my own initiative, through my own curiosity. It's like I was taught history in school, and later in life had some troubles. Anyway, I just ended up getting some free books, from a neighbor who was selling books, and so I bought a whole box of books for like $2, and they were rich people, and these were really great books. And I learned so much reading those books on my own time, in terms of understanding how much of history has just been they just tell you a little fable short story, and the deeper truth, is much different than the bullshit you're told. Because you learn some facts, like the fact that the tea in the Boston Harbor wasn't the tax tea, it was the cheap tea. The cheap tea was in the harbor. They weren't throwing expensive tea into the harbor, they were throwing the cheap imported tea into the harbor. Because they were basically saying, we want to take over the tea market in America. So it was just a trade war. It wasn't about some great protest against the king's exploitation. The king was actually giving us cheaper tea. That's the joke of it. Let's see. I feel like I'm better off learning what I need to know online. It's way more efficient than a teacher. Yes, I've always felt that way, and I always thought that was just about testing, and we ought to pay kids to pass tests. So just get rid of the teachers, okay? Just create some really great standardized testing, okay? You have to create some way to do the testing so they can't cheat. And you just give kids money to pass the test, okay? It's that simple. What's complicated? You pay them to learn. And it'd be a win-win. We'll pay much less to educate kids, and kids will be much better off. They'll earn a living learning, which is a hell of a lot better than spending money to learn. Huge win-win situation. But you can't get anybody to think about it, or you can't get it off their. I've been saying it for 20 years. Well, 30 years, 40 years. I was saying it before computers. That's how long ago I was saying it. I would have been so much better off. I was delivering newspapers every day for like 50 cents a day, okay? Making 50 cents a day, wasting an hour of my life every day. If they would have just paid me that money, right, to read books, I would have happily done so. I would have happily read a book for an hour instead of, trudging through the rain and the snow and the sleet and the hail and the storm of night and all the other crap in a second. And all they'd have to pay me was 50 cents a day. I mean, most kids nowadays grow up with a phone, yeah. Such great motivation to stay in school, not really. I don't know what that means exactly. Why would anybody stay? I mean, I don't know what that means, frankly. Such great motivation to stay in school, not really. I just don't know what that means. Yeah, no, it's much more efficient just to get a GED, just pass the test, just do your SATs. That's all a college cares about anyway, and just prove you know the shit. While watching your recent Bell video, I was hoping you would share your thoughts about faster than light influence of entangled photons. Oh, I think I'm sharing my opinion by saying it's a crock of shit. What are you believing in? Electrons have ESP, photons have ESP. Everything has ESP except us. So we have the big giant brain. We can't do any ESP. But the little brainless particles can. I mean, come on. Too silly. It's all crap. That's the whole point of making the videos, is they made up a completely wacky story. They just claim something's entangled. They have no way of knowing it's entangled. They have no way of doing any of this crap. They have to create this convoluted nonsense experiment where you get totally lost halfway through it. There's so many bullshitisms. Turn right, then turn 4 degrees left, and then turn 15 degrees, to your approximate tangential, blah blah blah, left foot. Then go where your small toe points, and I mean, so they create this idiotic path that you could never follow, and then say at the end, "We're at the Wicked Witch's house." It's a fable. It's gingerbread stories. It's just bullshit. It's a 3-bear story. I'm sorry you're impressed, frankly. It's so silly an idea. Don't you think they need, like, extraordinary evidence for this extraordinary theory? I mean, frankly, it's like somebody saying I talked to a UFO. If you're going to say you did that, then show me really good evidence. And they show you shit. So yeah, I found a couple of videos that are kind of illustrative of the point that they're just making this crap up. That the experiments aren't doing anything all that bizarre. There's not some we can't possibly explain it any other way than to make up a crazy ghost story. No, there's no way. You can't explain this robbery. The Invisible Man had to have done it. No human being could have possibly, walked into the bank after 8 o'clock and stole all the money, or something. Yeah, maybe it could be possible. Maybe they're just kind of making up a story that it's impossible. Well, there's no maybe about it. I mean, the whole thing started with Einstein making this, the spooky action argument and mocking it. All right, trying to come up with mockery, just as I did for the lever earlier in this video, where I point out how it's preposterous to think 1/2 mv squared could be the truth because it creates free energy. It's a paradoxical pile of crap. That's exactly what Einstein was doing. He was saying, look, it's a paradoxical pile of crap. And then Schrodinger, like a year later or two, piled on by inventing the Schrodinger cat as a joke, just to illustrate how silly you people were. So Einstein was saying, what, you think the moon disappears when you're not looking at it? All of these, kind of obvious nudges that your theory's a pile of shit. And then Schrodinger comes up with this great cat thing, and you idiots turn that into, hey, we invented entanglement. So now they say that, like, Einstein and Schrodinger are the fathers of entanglement when they invented it to mock your theory as being ridiculous. What do you think, the particles have ESP? And then you asshole said, yeah, they do. It's amazing. Fuck. I mean, the truth is just ironic and, in my opinion, just worthy of, you just have to mock what intelligence has done to intelligence. I mean, these are a lot of smart people, and they really do they're not smart enough to pull their heads out of their asses and think about what the fuck they're saying. Yes, exactly. It is a religion. That's the it's my whole point. I mean, I'm just so disappointed that these there's so many of these physicists who argue about how dumb these silly simpletons that fall for this silly religious crap are, and here they are preaching based on the same faith, the same never watch the Jesus walk on the water. Just pay it. I'm telling you, Jesus does walk on water. Photons talk to each other. It happens at supersonic speed, at superluminal speed. Have you seen the documentary on the physicist that got hit by photons in a accelerator? It burned a hole through him and he lived. Yeah, I don't follow the news much, and I'm sure I have more. All kinds of accidents have happened that they probably cover up. Like some, they turned on their magnets at the Hadron Collider, and there was some janitor was still down there, and who knows? He turned into some sort of elf man or something. He turned into like the Hulk or whatever, and they had to put him in a cage and blah 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 blah. But who knows? So yeah, I mean, obviously, its energy is a laser beam, right? Laser beams. We have laser beams now that blow a hole right through you. So I mean, focusing heat works. And that's basically all it is. I mean, everything we call energy is really just heat in a direction. Instead of the heat going in all directions, you convert it into heat in one direction, and then you call it a laser beam. But it's conceptually, heat is just scatter, and when you convert scatter into one direction, you have energy. I mean, what we call energy in the sense of do workable energy. You can't do work with heat unless you create a difference in the heat, the temperature. And then you're forcing the heat to go in one direction. Do you get it? Like, say if I take something hot and cold and put them next to each other, what am I forcing to have happen? Heat that's going in all directions will now go in one direction. And that's why it looks like energy. So the heat looks like energy, or something you can do work with, when you can get the heat to go in one direction. I mean, but anybody dumb enough to put their head in the beam of an accelerator, not too smart. But it's just such a, it's all just so fake and phony and fraudy. Tiny, it's just all interpretation experiments. They just take one tiny little circumstance and try to focus on it so much, and they just ignore all the 99% of the time it doesn't work. So it's like their two-slit analysis. They narrow the conversation to two slits that are infinitesimally small. So even though most slits, by most people's understanding, are some measure of opened, they'll tell you the answer when they're almost no slit, and that's it. That's the only one they can predict, and that's the coincidentally that's the one where you annihilate the point sources, the surfaces. But I mean, it's just such an obvious distortion for them to say our wave equation predicts the outcome, when no, it doesn't. In 99.999% of the cases, it doesn't predict the outcome. All right, they bless 1,000 suns in the head at one moment. Well, I think that's an insane exaggeration. I mean, unless the moment is so infinitesimally small. I mean, I can't even imagine how small the moment has to be, and then it can't be 1,000 suns anymore. Right? I mean, if I said I have a 9 million watt laser beam, and then but I'm only going to expose it to you where only 1/1,000,000th of a watt of photons actually gets to your head. That doesn't mean anything, right? But I can't imagine that the beam had 1,000 suns worth of energy. I mean, that's nuclear fusion or something. I mean, that's an insane amount of energy, so I don't know how that could possibly be true. No, can't be true. I mean, that's a distortion of perspective in some way. It's only 1,000 suns relative to the difference between the Earth and an electron or something. Yeah, so the electron saw it as 1,000 suns worth, or I don't know. Somehow they've distorted and broken perspective. It's like when LIGO says they can measure the width of a proton with their interferometer, and then the beam of their interferometer, number one, has wavelengths that are gigantic because they turn the light into infrared light. And then on top of that, it's bouncing back and forth between mirrors 1,600 times. How the fuck could they measure? How could they use that ruler to measure how thick a proton is when a photon, when it hits a surface, covers the area of 500 to 1,000 atoms? So infrared light is like 1,000 or 1,500 atoms worth of width in the wavelength. The wavelength of infrared light is like 1,500 atoms thick or wide. It's gigantic compared to a proton or an electron. How could you use that ruler to measure an electron or a proton? I mean, it's so on its face, that can't be true. There's got to be some other explanation, because that just can't be true. So their exaggerations are all over the place. The most tested, proven theory in the history of mankind. And they can't figure out that mv squared doesn't work. That it doesn't take 4 times more fuel to go twice as fast. Yeah. And these are rocket scientists, right? So the rocket scientists all know mv squared doesn't really work, because they know it's just about mass and velocity when it comes to thrust. So if they're going to make thrust, whether they're going to make it out of compressed air or a fire extinguisher or burning hydrogen, whatever the method they're going to use to create thrust, it really just comes down to the mass of particles moving a velocity. It's just a momentum equation. Thrust is always just a momentum equation. So they know, I mean, all the NASA physicists have to know 1/2 mv squared is like, all right, yeah, okay, it's a thing, but, it doesn't really do it. It doesn't really work. Bullets don't really have 2,000 or 1,000 times more energy than guns that fire them. The gun's recoil is the same energy as the bullet's, velocity and mass. The momentums are the same. This notion that the bullet has more energy is just, like I said, a NASA engineer knows. I'm not going to gain more thrust from the bullet. The one atom going 1,000 miles an hour isn't going to give me more thrust than 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour. Both of those circumstances are the same thrust. They're the same navigatable substance. They're the same amount of energy to a rocket ship. What's your opinion on the big crunch theory of where the universe will die off? Well, the crunch one I think is nonsense. That's the singularity, right? Obviously, it just depends on what you think the universe is doing. I would argue that we can surmise that the energy in the universe is not escaping. That is, it must, like a photon goes in a direction. it must reflect back, or the universe would just constantly lose heat. So that energy has to come back. Now, part of that could be the microwave background radiation. But I'd say the part that's more significant is gravity. That's what gravity is made out of, is the energy reflected back. And it reflects back to us broken, not as photons. So a photon goes out, gravity comes back as a reflection. Now that works for an infinite universe, and it also works for a bubble verse. But yes, my argument would be, if it's not a bubble and it's not infinite, then it has to, through entropy, die. It has to lose all its energy and collapse. Everything just expands and expands and expands, and finally everything just separates in distance away from everything else. So you either have to put the universe in a container, or it has to be infinite. But I don't see any reason to believe in any crunch theory. I don't think there's any proof that galaxies are capturing matter. There's just as much reason to understand that the galaxy looks the way it looks because it's losing matter. That would also explain why the velocities are higher for the stuff on the outside. Is because it has a higher velocity because it's leaving the galaxy. That's why its velocity is too high, because it's leaving. Alright, astronauts left a reflector. Yes, we know this. So if you had to accurate laser, you could utilize it. What? Astronauts left a reflector on the moon, so if you had an accurate laser, you don't need an accurate one. They do this all the time. There's somebody who does this like every 15 seconds or something. They shoot a beam of, every time the Earth is in the right position so they can see the moon. You can hit it, hit the spot where the reflector is. They shoot pulses of laser light. Now the truth is it's a 30,000 watt laser, but it only pulses for a millisecond. And the fact is the spot it makes on the moon is gigantic. It's like 4 miles across. So they don't have to be terribly accurate to hit the reflector. And so they send 3 billion photons or something, and they get back 3. It's that kind of thing. So only a tiny percentage of the photons come back that hit the reflector. But it's enough that they can, measure the speed of light and also detect any change in the distance between the Earth and the moon. But I don't know if it's a nice thing. It's a good idea. It's nice they thought it up and all that kind of crap. But I don't know. I don't know what other purpose you can put it to. It's a very nice long beam, but I guess until you make 2 reflectors, and then maybe you can make an interferometer. So maybe we can put a reflector very deep into space, somewhere, out in the moon's orbit at a 45 to 90 degree angle, and then we can make an interferometer or something. Let's see. You never had an interest in being a professor of physics philosophy. I never had an interest in being a teacher because, frankly, I consider myself a learner. I'm an investigator, I could argue. I sort of think of myself as a engineer in the sense that I've spent most of my time on political subjects or on physics subjects or on social subjects, just trying to engineer solutions to problems. Engineer the right, find the right answer. How do you answer the question? There's a fat guy, you can throw him off the bridge to save 7 people. What minimum information do you need to be able to make a decision? Because if they don't tell you anything, who the 7 people are, who the fat guy is, you can't do anything. because you can't know what the right thing to do is. So what's the minimum amount of information? That's what I would do. I would analyze and try to figure out, well, what do I have to really know? In terms of the destiny of these people, and would it ever be enough? Would I ever have enough information to be able to make a decision and feel okay about it? I mean, obviously, if one of the 7 people is a child molester, the other 6 are stuck because I can't save the bad guy if he's really bad. If he's a Ted Bundy or something. Well, even if the other 6 people are really nice people, and even if the fat guy on the bridge is going to have a heart attack in 3 days, so it doesn't matter, I still can't. You can't save them, because if I save them, I save the shitheads with them. And I can't save the nuclear, I can't save the dioxin. The barrel of dioxin means I can't save the barrels of carrots and the barrels of fruit and vegetables. I can't save the good barrels because I end up saving that dioxin barrel. That's what my brain does with its spare time. I just don't have an opinion about teaching. I mean, some of what I'm doing some of this is teaching, I suppose, and I hate it. So I guess part of me would tell you that, no, I wouldn't like being a teacher because I hate doing this. I hate trying to explain it and get people to, oh, well, okay, you didn't understand what I was saying when I said that. Oh, shit, okay, I'll redo that. I mean, it's very frustrating trying to explain things to people. Because every person has a different reaction to every word you speak. Like some people, look, okay, the other day I said faggot, and that was rude of me. It was wrong. But the reality is that for half the people, they totally get it. Okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, not a big deal. And for the other half, it's like, oh, gee, what a rude, obnoxious jackass. He's totally disrespecting the fight and the trails and all the gay people that have been hung by brutal, awful meanies and all that. No, I'm not doing any of that. But that's how they look at it, right? So it's every word is a trigger word. It's almost like it's like people say the word infinity and they're thinking that means God or something. So it's all layered in all this fact that you can't even use vocabulary. I say the word truth, and some people find that word obnoxious. There's no such thing as truth. You can't use the word truth, and blah, blah, blah. There's no facts. You can't say the word fact. Yeah. Come on, lighten up. If you had your life to live over, I'd have to live it with different capacities. So obviously I'd have to live it over again without an anxiety disorder. And the irony is, if I had not had an anxiety disorder, I probably would have been a jackass. I mean, a real jackass. I mean, I probably wouldn't have gained much appreciation for how difficult life can be, and I was always an underdog defender. So I guess it really depends on how you grow up. To live it over again, right? With the same... I was a really small kid, okay, as a kid, right? I ended up 6'1", but for most of my adolescence, I was way, I was less than, when I went to high school, I weighed less than 100 pounds, all right? I mean, I was a small person, and so I lived that small person kind of life, and it gave me a whole different perspective. And so you're saying, well, if I live my life over again, well, would I be that same person? If I'm the same person, I'm stuck. I'm doomed. There's not too many things I can change. Now, I would say that the one thing I'm certain of, if I could just fix 5 minutes of my life, I would extract when I smoked the first cigarette. Now, I don't know if that would fix it, right? Because 3 days later, I might have still gotten stuck in smoking a cigarette. But I just mean, if I could go back and give myself advice that I would pay attention to, or make something not happen, yeah, being addicted to nicotine was just a big mistake. If you had to live your life, would you have done anything major differently? Yeah, frankly, yes. If I could go back and backseat drive my life, There's about 7 million decisions I would have made differently. But that's the funny part is it's hard to tell. Some of them were, as much as they were not pleasant and they might even have hurt somebody else, they were necessary to my character building. And so, some of those I'd have to still let happen because I know that's why I am the person I am, is because I learned from that mistake. So some of the mistakes I would have to make to be the person I am, so this is figuring out what part of your identity to extract to get rid of the crappy parts of the mistakes of your life is just as complicated as trying to figure out whether you should push the fat man onto the train tracks. It's just not as simple as you would wish. But yeah, I made a lot of, let's say, you see, we call them bad decisions, but you know, I'm still alive, and I didn't think that was going to happen when I was 15. I thought there would be no chance I was going to live to be 30. So, but yeah, there's a lot of crap. It would have been better I didn't have happen. I was lucky that I lived a relatively isolated life, so I really couldn't do much damage to other people. So that's kind of the one saving grace, is that I don't have too many regrets regarding being cruel or unfair to other people. I don't like the thought of the dying process. That one bothers me. I don't want to die in pain and agony and, retching and all that kind of stuff. So that part scares me. Being dead doesn't scare me, but not finishing my work here, that irritates me. I really have to start thinking in terms of cleaning up, and laminating the pages of the book of my life, so they can endure into the future. So that's because it's all for naught if you can't finish the job, and it doesn't look like I can finish it while I'm still alive. So I have to kind of make sure I can finish it after I'm dead. But it is, I like the idea of being immune to harm, but I'm too aware of the fact that there's no immunity, really. There's just going to be somebody else who sort of will take my place in terms of being, experiencing an unpleasant existence. And, so the pain will live on. I'm afraid of coming back, you could argue. I'm afraid of being one of you. I had huge advantages in life, and just being born in America, all that kind of crap. You could just add up all these advantages, and there's so many living humans who are being born into just awful circumstances, and they just have no chance of becoming alive in the real sense of the word. They're just going to be animals trapped in a zoo. I really like to talk physics, but whatever. As long as you have videos online, there will be a history of your work. Truth will win in the end. That's the hope. I believe it. I really do. just because, in spite of all the dark ages, the fact that the human race keeps dipping, but it's like, the market trend is up. Okay, so humans are elevating their game. It's just they're not doing it very fast. And they're doing it, so badly. They're walking so badly that they're, getting bunions on their feet and all kinds of other crap. I mean, they're doing it so badly. But the real trend does seem to be that, we're getting, the truth does win over time. But it is a little scary. I mean, the last 20 years have been scary. I mean, the decline, even 40 years, right? I mean, the decline from the 70s that I grew up in and now is just, it's pretty stark. It's pretty horrifying. The degrade in what humans have become. Alright, what does that mean, afraid of being you? I'm afraid of being one of the people, the common people, the average people, the people. Okay, I don't mean anything personal, Zach. I mean, maybe you're an exceptionally different kind of human and you're much, you're aware and you're doing this, being, understanding your life and trying to figure out what buttons to press, and you're paying attention to all this stuff. You're not just a zoo animal, okay? But I'm just saying the average person is. The average person is embarrassing the human race. Okay, they're an embarrassment to the human race. Their brain is wasted on absolute shit. They watch shit, they consume shit, they talk shit, they listen to shit. It's all shit. They're shit eaters. It's like having a dog who's a poo eater. It's embarrassing, right? If your dog's going around eating other dogs' poo, I mean, ooh, jeez. And human race is embarrassing. Embarrassing poor performance. And it's so frightening because I don't want to be one of those monsters. It's like I'm afraid to be a retard. I'm afraid to have Alzheimer's. I'm afraid of those things because it's such a degrade in function. Alright. Inferior intellect is what you mean. Yeah, it's not just about intellect, it's about character. Alright, it's about capacity. I mean, it's more than just knowledge of what's the capital of Switzerland, okay? It's a wisdom degrade. Can I put it that way? It's not just that they're ignorant. They're belligerently stupid. Okay, they're silly. They're ugh. Alright. Do you think Google can be defeated? Well, everything is defeated, right? Rome fell. I think Google has become obviously disinterested in doing anything decent on the internet, right? I mean, it's all just about buying companies, marketing, selling ads. The search function has gotten so bad. It's covered in ads now, right? Isn't that the great irony? Google was going to save us from ads. And now they not only put ads on everybody's web page, but they also put them on the search page. So the only thing that made them better was that they didn't have ads in the search. And now the search is covered in ads. So, yeah, that should be defeatable. Now, is there any... back in 1990, there were a bunch of people on the internet who cared about saving the internet from corporate destruction. And there aren't any of those people now. So it's really a tragic, sad fact that, I was arguing this shit 25 years ago on the internet. 25 years ago on a dial-up connection, I was arguing this very cause. I was fighting this very cause to keep the corporations from fucking the internet. And there was a lot of people that were motivated. And we were. The fact is, we stopped Microsoft from doing what Google did. But then somehow, 3 or 4 years later, when Google did the same thing that Microsoft was going to do, that is put ads on other people's websites, all of a sudden it was okay. Because Google is love. And it was just so stupid. Now, I was saying to people, what do you think this is a fucking corporation? Do you think they don't have a plan? They make no money, right? They made no money for 2 years. They lost millions of dollars. You think they were going to do that forever? I would be telling people, what do you think is? What's the plan? You think they're going to have no ads forever? You think that's the game plan for Google? They're just going to give you free search forever. I mean, it was like I couldn't get anybody to understand that. Don't you understand? It can't be. They must have a plan. They're going to fuck us. You can't see. They must have a fuck them plan. And the plan was, like I said, to put ads on every website on the internet. You know, so yeah, no ads on the search page, but ads everywhere else. So yeah, you can't defeat anything now just because the politics is so broken and people are so lost in their little small causes, fighting for their own personal, my right to wear a green t-shirt or something. I mean, everything is just, people are so myopic and they have such a small view of the world. They're all telescopic, microscopic lenses on just their personal crapola, and they really can't think about anything to do with human civilization or the future or anything. It's all small-minded crap. I mean, even physicists don't make physics video for the sake of science. They make it for clickbait. You know, I'm going to jump into 1,000,000 balls of, you know, whatever. I'm going to, look at me, I'm flying off, I jumped out of a helicopter. You know, they're just doing stunts. You know, it's just, you know, so it's just like, fuck, that's not science, you fucker. But don't you think not indulging in moronic pleasure and getting the best out of the absurdity makes you a moron? Well, fuck you. I'll just block you. You know, you nihilist dick shit. No, of course I think you know, a small sacrifice is you know, for a gain. So you wouldn't jump on the grenade even if it saved 1,000,000 15-year-olds from horrible death. I mean, you'd sacrifice nothing for anyone, ever. For any cause, for any purpose, for anything ever. It's all fuck it, right? Because you're so fucking important. Ugh. Puke on you. I mean, science is the kind of thing you do for the sake of it, frankly. Okay? I mean, I really don't think I am, you know, as much as somebody's going to find this a comparison obnoxious, I see myself as a Louis Pasteur or any one of those people, in the sense that I was curious and I wanted a solution. And I didn't want it just because I wanted to cure rabies, because curing rabies would be a great thing. Part of wanting it is wanting to solve the puzzle. I'm obsessed with solving puzzles. That's what I do here on planet Earth. I see puzzle pieces and I want to put them together. So part of it is very gratifying in a way when I've successfully taken pieces and put them together and made it look like, you know, I found the right connection, the right arrangement. There's a great deal of gratification in being right. So yeah, so it takes a little bit of work. No big deal. So part of me wants to fix Google just because I want there to be symmetry and logic in how the internet functions. I want it to be properly indexed. I want it to be an organized library. You would go into the library with the books scattered on the floor and, you know, hidden in cupboards and, you know, with grease on them and slop and, you know, half open, bent in half. You don't care how sloppy things are. I do. I prefer organization and to live a life that where the maze can make as much sense as possible. That appeals to me. That comforts me. People seem to be jumping into panpsychism. I don't think they really are. But I just think that that's the same jump the physicists are doing. They're all just looking for answers that they want. They want the truth to be a certain way, and it's become legal to just make it that way if you choose. Just make up a fake story. There are, it's like the people, look, I'm all for the whole try to find your happiness, and so if you feel like you're really a squirrel, I'm all for it. I'll call you Dr. Squirrely if you want. I'll chatter now and then if you want me to chatter like a squirrel. I'll try to talk squirrel. I don't care. Indulging is fine. But don't tell me there's no such thing as the difference between squirrels and dogs or something. I mean, don't tell me there's no male and female. What the fuck? So, obviously people have just, they're distorting all kinds of realities to believe in their bullshit, to defend a position that's in defense. It's like the vegetarian argument. The meat eaters will make up such lies. Like we actually did run around smashing squirrels over the head and ripping their raw flesh to pieces and eating them. When do you think we did this? Before fire, eating meat was impossible. It wasn't in any way practical. You couldn't eat meat and survive. Raw meat, it would get you, just the bacteria, just all the shit you'd end up eating that would kill you. Let alone the fact you can't digest it. It's such a stupid argument. You're saying, why should I have to argue something so stupid? Our guts, our teeth, our jaw, everything is not made to consume flesh. It's just not there. We don't have the tools. As we come to the early decline of religion, well, whatever. Obviously the German philosophers, 100 and 200 years, between 200 and 100 years ago, killed God. Darwin killed God as a reasonable man's theory. No smart man could believe. But yeah, what happened to the physics in the same time? It got wooier and wooier and wooier and wooier. So obviously there's something with human beings that makes them susceptible to creating these fake narratives. And so that's what we're living in. And make your own fake narrative. Everybody thinks they're entitled to their own fake truth. And clearly I'm arguing that, no, there's a real truth, and we all should be looking for the real truth. And fuck this bullshit that there's multiple truths. No, there isn't. The water's wet. Dogs bark. Blah, 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 blah. All right. They want the universe to be a magical place when it's hard materialism. Yes, thank you. And that's coming from physicists now. That's the part that's just so fucking frightening. Physicists aren't materialists. Chimpanzees are vegetarians, so come on. Psycho chimps kill other animals and try to eat them. There's no chimpanzee that regularly eats other animals, monkeys and stuff. It doesn't happen. They would die. When they did, I think it's a great story, but steak tartare was introduced in America, as a thing, eating raw beef, as weight loss, right? Because there was a guy who was weighed 400 pounds and he needed to lose weight. So a dietitian created this idea, well, look, eat all this fucking goddamn raw meat and it'll go right through you. Your body won't be able to metabolize any of it. And so you'll lose weight. And it worked. So, it's just a fact. We can't do it. Our body can't consume it. We can't chew it enough in the first place. And then we don't have the structure to break down the proteins, the fats and the proteins. Your body says, fuck you. It loves carbohydrates because it can get the sugar out so easy. It has to do a tremendous amount of fucking smushing and jiggling and squishing and squashing and pour acid on it and do all this shit to digest big proteins. To knock the proteins into small little amino acids that can get through the walls of your intestine requires a tremendous amount of work. Where if you just eat a fucking cookie or a bowl of rice, your body has to do almost no work at all. But anyway, I don't want to argue vegetarianism. I don't even care. You don't have to be a vegetarian. I'm just saying, don't use irrational nonsense as an excuse. Don't say we're lions and we have to eat meat. It's just an idiotic argument. Yeah, well, that's the problem. It is the planet of the apes, and the truth is just dark and horrible. Even for the apes, I mean, frankly. The apes couldn't go look for the truth either, right? I mean, the fact that the humans fucked up was only half the story. The other half of the story is the apes were just mimicking what the humans did. They would have built the same broken empire. They already had the same divisions, the same bullshit, the same bigotries, the same, it's all happening all over again. They were going down exactly the same path. They didn't improve anything. They didn't fix anything. They just started over and were learning badly, learned the wrong lessons. They didn't learn from their slavery. Oh, candidates. There's no point. Nobody with integrity can run for any office because, you have to be a compulsive liar. So, nobody good will run. I mean, then you have to be able to cover up your life somehow. So you can't have made any mistakes. I mean, that anybody knows about. So it's like you have to be rich, really. Because only the rich can cover everything up. Yeah, I just wish there was somebody I could say is talking sense, but there really aren't. There's so few. People they haven't done enough, they haven't spent enough time thinking about all these subjects and how they roll over time. They need a political simulator that'll show you how, yes, welfare fails. In the long run, it fails. You have to have some kind of, you can't do it all with carrots. You have to have a real stick somewhere now and then, because the carrots will you'll be broke trying to incentivize people to be decent. CBDC, what? Whatever that is, that's scary. Well, I don't know what that even means. What if you got to pick him or her? Yeah, I was saying I don't know of anybody. I wish I had somebody I could admire. I wish I could say there's some person on the internet. Oh yeah, pick them. I mean, I could say some people who I think are could do no harm, but I mean, the idea of being president means you have to have a plan. You can't just know how to pick people who might do decent work. Who might actually do their job honestly. Central bank digital currencies. Well, whatever. Look, you're silly little the Fed did it bullshit doesn't have anything to do with it. There's nothing wrong with central banks. There's nothing wrong with digital cash, okay, because it all represents a real, okay, commodity, which is dollar bills. And as long as they don't print actual dollar bills and put them into actual circulation, that is, as long as the government doesn't just print the money and pay people Social Security checks with it, we're okay. But the fact is the debt is the problem. The money that's been borrowed. You're going to blame the banks because people borrow money? So don't blame the banks because the government's been foolish enough to borrow money. Alright, paying kids to stay in school, you said. To stay in school? What did I say? Paying kids to stay in school. No, I'm saying get rid of schools, you fucking dumb shit. Especially now with the internet. Fuck that. Buy every kid at least minimum internet access and then just pay them to learn. Pay them to pass a test. No school, no teachers, no bullshit. Just tests. Anyway, paying kids to stay in school, you said, was a great idea. And get rid of teachers. Just use programs. Well, I don't know what you mean by stay in school then. I don't know what that fucking means. I'm saying fuck lesson plans. Fuck all the bullshit that they throw in. All the wasted time at gym class. Or some other bullshit. Alright? And just oblige the kid to fucking acquire the knowledge. How to do it. And I'm saying that will work so fucking much better. Use a kilowatt as a unit of currency. It already is a unit of currency. It already has a price. I'm paying it right now to the electric company. It's already a commodity regulated to the value of $1. It's already tied right to it like a standard. We don't have a gold standard. We have an everything standard. We have a wheat standard, a corn standard, a Bitcoin standard. We have a battery standard. We have a ball bearing standard. We have a light bulb standard. We already have a well standardized monetary system. Anyway, what is space? Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. It's just stupid. Space is the distance between a proton and an electron. It's nothing, okay? Now, there can be things in space called bits of force, okay? But they're not space, okay? Space is the vacuum. And everything that happens in the universe is little things moving in the vacuum. Space. Space is the drawing board. And the stuff is the crayon. Okay? And there's crayon moving the speed of light. And there's crayon that doesn't move at all until a crayon bit going the speed of light hits it. So that's all there is. There's just bits of crap in the space. Okay. I can't, I'm sorry, I don't want to be insulting. I mean, obviously this is a real thing because they've bent your brains. I guess anybody under 40 years old, all they've heard about is bent space-time and blah, blah, blah. See, when I was a kid, all of that crap, no one even said the word entanglement. No one even talked about it because it was a stupid, silly idea. And bent space was even like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's got to be some real thing that causes gravity. So none of this stuff had really caught on in terms of you really were taught Newtonian mechanics, and that was good enough. If somebody would give you $10,000 to answer, is other bipedal life outside Earth, what would you say? I don't even know what the fuck that could mean. Why would somebody have to give me $10,000? I would bet my life, okay, my welfare, that the answer to the question is comfortably stated as an asserted fact that there is nothing out there, because we can't make one. Even though we're on a planet covered in body parts, they don't arise. Okay, a new life form doesn't show up. A new configuration of the DNA molecule doesn't show up. I mean, obviously creating replicating matter is not a simple task. It only happened once that we know of in the entire history of matter on Earth. So it's clearly not a simple thing. So I'm saying I don't have much reason to believe it has gotten anywhere on any other planet where it's even gotten to an ocean. Even the ocean is a big, with all the fish and shit. Even that's a gigantic step, let alone creating land mammals with brains, big brains. So there's no hope. There's so many obstacles. I mean, again, only one time did it happen where a cell ate another cell and didn't digest it. And, you have to do that to really start the ball rolling in terms of creating, sexual reproduction and, all the complexities of creating organelles inside of these microbes and all of that crap. So, I mean, and there's all steps that only happen once. One neuron. All the cellular reproductions, all the kinds of mutations of cells, all the different kinds. One neuron, that's it. So, whatever. That's sort of a science subject, but it's, it's a little distant. Because, all I can say is it's rare. That's all I can say, okay? I know it's rare. Because first, we can't make one. So it's not that easy. And the planet Earth can't make one either very often. So even in some hidden cave somewhere or somewhere, nowhere. It doesn't happen. There's no little squirmy that isn't made out of DNA. But what would it mean if there was? I mean, it would have to do the same kind of shit we did, right? There's no other track to its development than the track of evolution. And what's it going to evolve into? I mean, let's say it didn't feel. Then you almost say it can't learn. But there's no reward and punishment. I mean, there's so many complexities to creating an AI or something that could observe its universe and draw conclusions and make statements about their world. To get to that level of intelligence, you have to do it the same way we did it. And we've done it based on a selfish, idiotic organism. And so we have a selfish, idiotic organism's perspective, not an intelligent perspective. No, the vacuum doesn't have energy. Movement is energy. Something has to move. There's bits of energy coming from space and hitting you. You can sort of see some of it, right? The moonlight is hitting you. The stars are all sending lights and photons that are hitting you. There's radio waves hitting you. And the fact is there's less of it hitting you from the ground than it's hitting you from space, and that's what's pushing you into the earth. But you don't move because nothing hit you. You only move because something hit you. It's a push universe. The vacuum isn't anything. There's little things in the vacuum, and the fact is, because they're in the universe, they automatically are pushing everything in the universe. That's what the little BBs are doing. You're like a little checker, and I have a box full of BBs that bounce all the time. They always move. And so you're constantly under pressure. You're constantly being pushed. If you had to be a mammal, what would you be? Blah, 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 blah. I like the whole flying thing, to tell you the truth. So, especially when I was a kid, I liked flying. I don't like it much now. I don't like heights now at all. But I used to dream about flying. I used to fly in my dreams, and it really was kind of a spectacular sensation. So, part of me says, yeah, I'd like to be a flying thing. I don't know what you're saying. We are mammals. I don't know what that has to do with anything. He has a choice between a whale and you. I don't know what that means either. He was just saying, look, if you had to be any other mammal, okay? So, yeah, it's not a complete sentence. But whatever. People, go ahead. Yeah, just go ahead and waste time on the trivial, non-existent verbiage mistakes that somebody can make. I mean, all the time I read a comment wrong, or I get the wrong impression, and that's all. Those are negative things. But there's just, you know, there's no point in laughing out loud icons. You know, it's not a good idea. I mean, if you're going to sincerely tell me that you didn't understand that he was saying any other mammal, okay. But I think you're smart enough to know that's what he meant. Something they don't talk about much is, you know, the whole moon thing and the Earth, and the fact that we have that one master continent that the whole thing started with. And, you know, the more I think about it, the more it seems to make sense that the Earth actually collided with the moon, and that's how the moon got into orbit. Because, right, you always have to change something's speed to get into an orbit. It's like impossible to come from the outside into a solar system and get into an orbit unless you hit something to reduce your speed, because otherwise you're just going to fly out again, or you're going to crash into some kind of gravitational body. But you have to collide. You either collide or you go right the back out again. So you have to collide with something. And you can collide in a catastrophic way, that is, you go right into the sun, or you can collide in some little way, and then you get to stay. So it seems logical that the only way we could have the moon is that we had to bump into it to slow it down, to give it, you know, to lower its velocity so it could stay, okay, in orbit with us. And that sort of makes sense that when the moon hit, it made the mega continent, you know, a big blob stuck on the Earth, and it fractured the Earth into plates. So it sort of makes sense that it took the surface of the Earth and it fractured it into plates, and then it put crap on top of the fracture, and then the crap starts moving with the fractured plates. Seems a plausible explanation, but I've never really heard anyone talk about it. I mean, I don't know enough of the science to be able to make, you know, hard speculations, but I heard something about, like, the moon's, you know, made out of like a lot of it's, you know, these elements, and the elements are very similar to what the elements on the crust of the Earth are. So it's kind of a viable explanation. And when you go deeper into the Earth, you don't have those same elements. It's a lot of aluminum and a lot of other crap. So the surface is very different. You know, the continental stuff is very different than the deeper stuff. But anyway, it's just interesting, I think. Okay. All right, is there a mechanism of interaction between space and matter? Again, I you know, Tim, there's a point where I just say, shut up. Okay, it's a totally uninteresting subject to me. I already have an understanding of how the universe works, and there's no role for space to play except to be the vessel that everything else happens in. I see no reason to believe in any continuous substance, and then the continuous substance has burgers in it or whatever. I don't see any point in having an ether or any kind of whatever, continuous slob, you know, pizza with anchovies or whatever. I think the model of empty space and then matter moving inside the empty space works perfect. So I don't have your curiosity about this subject. I don't see any reason to worry about it. Whether it exists or doesn't, it doesn't really matter. All you have to explain is the fact that the forces do all appear to be moving at the speed of light, and they do, as Newton would say, completely equal momentum. You want to move a piece of matter twice as fast with twice as much velocity and energy, you just hit it with twice as much force. What do you think about whatever this is? Gravitricity? See? Gravity. I don't know. Strong potential energy using weights lifting. What strong potential? And there's no such thing as potential energy, right? You're just stealing energy from something or storing energy. There's only two ways. Energy is either free, like the force is moving free, like a light beam, or it's trapped inside of a configuration of atoms, or it's a stream like gravity. So, there's no potential. It's all active energy. It's just that you can put your boat right next to a stream, and then you can say, the boat has potential energy, because I could put it in the stream and it would go. But the boat doesn't have any energy. It's waiting to have active energy. It's waiting to gain energy from the stream. All right. Let's see what he say here. Strong potential using whatever, weights lifting, I don't know. Dropping, solving the renewable energy, whatever this is, intermittency problem. Well, whatever, there's no free energy. And right now we already have such cheap energy, it's almost a silly argument, in some respects. But we know how we get energy. We steal it from streams, okay? It's trapped inside of atoms. You can break the atoms. Okay, that's a little messy. You get into the whole nuclear waste problem and all that kind of crap. But obviously the geothermal works to some extent. The tidal works. It's just about investing your dollars in the long-term solution. So I would argue, I guess, the most efficient of all of these things is some sort of hydroelectric. So either tidal or, controlling how the rain falls and taking advantage of what gravity gives, through convection, putting the water up, and we just take advantage of it falling down. But we have to invest in it, okay? I mean, the photovoltaic is good, but I mean, it's frankly, it's not very cost effective as much as people hype it, okay? The fact is the manufacturing has limited potential, and it is expensive, and the output is minimal until they come up with better battery mechanisms. I mean, the great thing about the hydroelectric or the tidal is you can create your own battery. You can pump the water with the energy you're creating on the off-peak hours and, reuse it. You can you can use your hydroelectricity to pump the water back into the reservoir. All right, how come the moon doesn't fall into the Earth over time? It's actually leaving over time, so its orbit isn't perfect. So it has a little bit too much velocity. So slowly but surely it's moving away, and that's a problem. For the long term, because obviously it's going to create kind of radical changes in the environment. But yeah, it's a long way off. So I don't know what you want me to answer. How do you want me to answer the question? I mean, the Earth curves away. The moon falls into the Earth, okay? But the Earth keeps curving away. So the moon can't fall into the Earth because as it falls, the Earth curves away. So it keeps falling, okay? But the target keeps, the curvature means it can't hit the Earth. Probably a better way to say that, right? I mean, your velocity is pushing you past the curvature of the Earth. The Earth's curvature is here. Your velocity is pushing you past that curvature. So as you fall, you keep missing the Earth because your velocity keeps pushing you past the curvature of the Earth. So if you had no velocity, then the moon would fall into the Earth. But it has just the right velocity, well, a little too much velocity, but close to just the right velocity to stay in orbit. And depending on where you're going to be in orbit, you just change your speed. So if the Earth was a little closer, then it would be in just the right speed, and it wouldn't be leaving. Or if we made it even closer, and then you just give it a higher velocity. So the closer you bring it to the Earth, the higher the velocity, it'll stay in orbit. Or you could take it further away and just make it go slower, and it'll stay in orbit. So the size of the orbit dictates the speed or the velocity you need to stay in orbit. I don't know how much of a parabola the moon has. That's a question I haven't thought about. I don't know what the percentage is, because obviously it does do the parabola thing where it comes a little closer to the Earth in one turn, But I think the moon actually has the Earth around the sun is more of a parabola than the moon around the Earth, I think. But I'm not sure. I mean, when the moon looks bigger, it only looks bigger because it's on the horizon, and it's getting expanded by light scatter. Now, let me see what time it is. What I'm doing here. How long have I been doing this and whatnot? Oh, 2 hours. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, maybe another 10 or 15 minutes. We'll call it a night. So, comment now or blah, blah, blah. Or your chance will be whatever. We'll see. If nobody comments, and I'll leave earlier. We'll see how it goes. With a mean eccentricity of point. Look at that. See, that's really tight, right? 0.0549. And we're 0.01. So we're 5 times less parabolic or whatever. We're... Oh, so the moon is more. Oh no, so yeah, that's less. Ours is higher. So, yes, the Earth is more of a parabola than the moon. Okay. Are you going to watch the workshop science video? Yeah, I was going to. So I'll save that for another video. It's not that interesting just because, I mean, obviously the 4 forces are all the same force, right? I mean, the strong force, as I've explained, is just an electron between 2 protons solves the problem. So it's not even a force. The strong force isn't a real force. It's the absence of force in some respects. And then the electrical, I can't remember what the other ones are actually. But yeah, it's as I've already said. I mean, these aren't. It's all the same thing. Okay, it's just gravity at a frequency is light. It's all the same stuff. Magnetism is a pattern of light. Invisible light, obviously. Now, I didn't go to college. It's when my anxiety disorder kicked in. I was going to go to. I was already. There was 2 colleges that were negotiable. So it was LSU and MIT, right? MIT was $40,000 a year, and LSU was like 12 or something. All right, and so I was paying for it, okay, with money I earned, working very hard. So I had like 40 grand in the bank when I was 17, and I graduated high school at 17, and so in hindsight, MIT, I didn't realize the huge difference in the prestige of universities and all this stuff. And LSU, we used to live in Louisiana, so I sort of had a connection to the South, and I liked living in the South. I liked the warm weather, so that really appealed to me a lot. So anyway, I I had chosen to go to LSU, all that kind of crap. But my anxiety disorder was getting worse and worse and worse. And so by the time it was time to leave, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't face it. So I had to put it off for a year. And I just never got better. So it was all kind of sad. But yeah, I would have been taking physics and all engineering courses. I was definitely going to college to be an engineer. There's other interests to have. I like playing with my plants. I grow lots of plants. You know, in the summer I grow a vegetable garden and I have lots of flowers and blah 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 blah. But interests, yeah, I mean, I like programming, you know. I have lots of stuff I like doing. You know, I paint. I'm a pretty good painter considering how little time I've put into it. You know, I enjoy doing that too. Couldn't really make any money at it. It's a hard racket to, you know, get. It's not a very practical thing to do because it is really a hard, you know, it's like being a basketball player or something. There's only a tiny percentage of the people that get to play, and the rest of them just starve and die. I mean, my favorite thing to do is to lie in the sun, you know, so I have to admit that, you know, if I was just to do something that I like doing, yes, I'd like to just sit on a beach in some secluded island somewhere. I don't really like thinking. It's just what you have to do, you know, while you're, you know, it's really hard to avoid it unless you are on a paradise island or something where you can just be occupied, you know, pushing your toes into the sand or something and, you know, drinking your margaritas. But yeah, so while you're here living in crud, it just seems like it's much more fun to do something scientific or, you know, something challenging. But I can't say I really like it. Yeah, I don't pay my bills. No, I mean, frankly, I you know, but I have a Social Security check, and that's it. It's not been an easy life. I don't think any kind of meditation is worth it, frankly, because I don't even believe in it in a conceptual way. I don't think, I mean, it's just, look, I don't do it very well. I guess that would be the point. I don't think there's any way you can clear yourself of your identity and pretend to empty your mind. I don't see how somebody with a mind does that. 2 plus 2 pops in, something pops in. It's just almost impossible to keep stuff from popping in. And the more you become aware of your body, the more you say, God, I have cancer. I mean, it doesn't do any good. I mean, it just brings in thoughts that are just so negative. So it's like I never did, you know, LSD didn't do me any good. Any kind of, you know, psychedelics didn't work on me because they just made the blood on the walls more obvious. You know, it was just a nightmare, you know. So I just don't have the disposition for it. So whatever it's worth to other people is fine, but it's not worth anything to me. And the Buddhist part, I'd just say, is completely evil. I mean, it's just another fable, and it's such a stupid one. Ah, life is suffering. So what? Continue. I mean, it's a retarded philosophy. I mean, everything sucks. Let's just keep sucking. Some other tubers make and mix great videos of you that could win awards. Yes, I would agree that Gray Cho guy has really done some brilliant, whatever you want to call that, photoshopping in a way, right? He's taken the raw material and it's not gilding a lily, but it's taking the noise out, in a way, and added the poignancy, the emotional poignancy that sort of needs to be added to some things. I mean, Shakespeare needs to, it's like the acoustic guitar or something. It needs to be well amplified and well, to really feel it. You got to take the noise out. You got to take the sound of the person's fingers going across the strings, or you know what I mean. You got to clean it. And he cleans me very well. I mean, one of his first videos is still one of my favorites. The one with the shark in it and the the seals and the alligator picture and what the fuck? I should remember the name of it, right? I can't remember the name. It's just, getting old sucks. Unintelligent design. Yeah, that's it. It's just a great video. They did a giant one that's really good. The Bonnie one, I mean, just breaks your heart. It's, ugh. All right, 4 minutes or so. So, see if somebody can make one more poignant reference to some relevant subject. Piro's a fuckhead. Somebody could type that. That would be. Piro's a fuckhead. Almost out of tea, so it's perfect timing. Let's see. There are articles in Forbes called Earth Crust May Be the Result of an Earth Scattering Impact with Early Protoplanet. It's funny that they would think it would be a protoplanet when the moon seems the obvious candidate. Like I said, how did the moon get there? There's not a whole lot of great explanations for how it got there, except having to bang into the Earth to stay there. But anyway. 2 trillion galaxies and no life but us. The responsibility. There's no responsibility, actually. You know what I mean? It's just, there's nothing for intelligence to do. Unfortunately, the universe doesn't have cancer. It doesn't need us to show up and get a medical degree and cure the universe's cancer. There's just, I would argue that the one good thing, you could think of like a South Park episode or something, the one great mission we could go on is to find the plug for this pinball machine and unplug the damn thing. But that's just a Three Bears kind of wishful thinking story. I wish there was a mission we could go on to fix the problem, but we can't. We can only fix our problem. Now, I'm pretty certain the universe doesn't have life cancer all over the place, so it's not as frightening to think about as it could be. I mean, if life was something easy to build, a replicating machine, that makes a copy of itself, if that was an easy construction, okay, then the story is even more horrifying, and it's hard to imagine what we can do except send probes of machines, replicating machines. We could send replicating machines from the Earth at very high speeds, and they could actually escape the solar system before it degrades into shit. And they could go out into space and try to annihilate life wherever they found it, But obviously this is a story that no one's going to, it's going to be a very hard sell. All right, anyway. There are a bunch of craters on the moon, isn't there? Yeah, because they didn't get washed away. So there's no eroding atmosphere on the moon. So there's no erosion. Nothing erodes. Because there's no atmosphere to erode it. There's no water. There's no nothing moving to erode anything. So it's just showing you what the Earth looked like back when the moon crashed into it, I mean, it's just giving you a peek at what it looked like, whatever, 500 million years ago, a billion years ago, 2 billion years ago. It didn't evolve from when the universe was full of pieces, and the pieces were hitting all the time. But it's also, the moon has saved every single impact. Every single impact has still got a picture on the surface. It's still a picture, where all the surface impacts on the Earth are all washed away. All right. There's a bunch of craters on the moon, isn't there? Okay, yeah. People that believe in religion are very frustrating. Yeah, well, I'm saying that I'm finding scientists very frustrating because they're really dumb and obstinate and belligerent, and they won't listen to arguments, and they're fucktarded cunts. They tend to revert to their faith as evidence. Well, what the fuck do you think entanglement is? Faith. Quantum computing, faith. These are all faith. This isn't going to work. This is crap physics. Remember when Pyro said the purpose of life is to turn entropy into information? Well, this whole information shit. See, that's like Joseph. I don't know. I don't know who in the Bible. I mean, you almost say the information is like the Holy Ghost. I mean, it's just such a bullshit contribution to physics. Calling action in the universe information is just such a pile of shit. Ugh, it's pathetic. Really, it's pathetic. There's no fucking black hole recording the events of the universe, It's just such a pile of shit. I mean, obviously there's only one way we got here, a certain bang, 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 bang. And, but just like the Earth has lost its craters, the history is gone. You're not going to find the Earth craters again. You're not going to remake them. You can have so just think how much information you would need to reconstruct the craters on the Earth. Just imagine the preposterously insane amount of information you would need, in terms of all the energy that, left with all those impacts, all the pieces moved around. I mean, it's insane. It's just silly to call that information. I mean, it's like reconstructing the footprints, that the ocean washes off the beach. You couldn't even do that. But it's just this jargon. I mean, they say, some jackass says this shit, and everybody just goes for, multiverse, and everybody's talking multiverse. Susskind says holographic universe. Everybody starts talking holographic shit. I mean, it's just, fuck. And I'm just like, how does any of that crap catch on? It's obnoxious to me when I see physicists doing it. It's obnoxious. It's not just like I have even a tiny impulse to say, oh, gee, that sounds like such a cool idea. No, it's obnoxiously silly. Dark matter? I mean, it's obnoxious as an explanation. Oh, the invisible man did it. There's absolutely no difference between an invisible man theory and dark matter. It's like somebody walking into court and saying, the Invisible Man killed Nicole Simpson. I mean, it's that retarded. And people fall for this crap. Well, I haven't heard of Block Universe, but it doesn't sound good. Yeah, it doesn't sound right. I know with the Schrodinger cat thing, like I said, Schrodinger was deliberately mocking quantum mechanics. He was deliberately proposing something to show just how fucking silly what you people have done to it is. I mean, this is a guy who believed in waves and believed in his, his formulas and stuff, but he knew this was a wrong direction, entanglement, and he knew that was horse shit. And it's just such a fucking irony that they've turned this into he proposed entanglement. No, he mocked it as being ridiculous, that your theory depends on something ridiculous. ESP particles, what are you, fucking crazy? Cats are half dead, half alive. Particles are in one place, they're in two places. No, you're idiots. And somehow they turned that fucking joke upside down. It's like everybody deciding to put on clown shoot, everybody becomes clowns, and the only clowns are people who are dressed normally. I mean, it's so ironic. It really is the insane people running the nut house. And only the sane people are trapped in the little, padded rooms. It's just so fucking funny. I mean, the irony of it. Like I said, most people think Schrodinger was an advocate for entanglement. They think the argument was in somehow defense of entanglement. I mean, it's just so funny. Let's see. Block universe is past and future exist. Well, yeah, that's just too silly. The past is unreclaimable. It's gone. It just ain't gonna happen again. It's gone. Gone. The universe is not going to go backwards. It can't go backwards. It just can't. It has no route. There's no road there. But yeah, just the fact that kind of talk appeals to people. Like the past still exists somewhere. Like second to second, millisecond to millisecond, picosecond to picosecond. I mean, zecosecond to zecosecond. It still exists. The recording is that perfect. I mean, it's just like, what are you talking? How do you think it's occupying the space? Where's it doing this? Still being the past. Where's the past still being the past? Fuck. You have to reuse the parts. I mean, you understand, I can't go back to the past and, like, say, go pet a brontosaurus, because all of his atoms are now in, like, my eyeball. One of my eyeballs is made out of the atoms that were in the brontosaurus. I mean, come on, you really think the atom is still in the brontosaurus and it's in me? It can't be in both places. Come on, too silly. Sabine made a video about going into the past. What a joke. Yeah, well, she always is a little wishy-washy. So, I mean, every time she does say it's possible, then she pretty much says, but it's impossible. So you can't be sure she's exactly advocating for that theory. But clearly, the fact that she is wasting her time, her field of study, is dark matter. I mean, why the fuck would anyone waste their time analyzing dark matter? I mean, it's, it's just, that's like somebody wasting their time painting assholes. Nothing but just paint assholes. Rhinoceros asshole, elephant asshole. Well, actually, that would probably be quite innovative and interesting in some respects. So, never mind. That's a joke, right? I mean, it's like the Schrodinger cat thing, right? You're better off wasting your time painting assholes than you are studying dark matter. I mean, come on. The asshole guy is way more, I get it. than the dark matter person. Do you eat fish? No, I don't, but I'm see, farming is one problem, right? So when you're creating more life, okay, to eat, that's bad. But when you're taking the life that already exists on Earth and you're just saying, I'm going to shorten its lifespan and I'm going to end its reproductivity, well, you could argue that's a good thing. So in some ways, fishing the natural resources is probably more humane than letting the fish get killed the natural way. It could be argued. But I'm not going to make those arguments. Okay. I don't think anything should be harmed if it doesn't have to be. Period. But I do know the facts that if you don't kill it, something else will. And maybe we can kill things better than nature will kill them. So I have to concede I can't really make a great argument to save the whales, because what are you saving them for? You know, to be food, to be killed by something. Fuck that. How can they say antimatter exists in a stable form in the universe unless it's in a black hole or something? Well, I'm just saying it's how can there be even a positron? Where are they? I mean, where in the atomic model do you hide the positrons? I don't get it. It's as light as an electron. Where is it then? And this whole annihilation thing, I mean, does anybody believe this? That they annihilate and little poofy neutrinos pop out or something? I mean, it's just, fuck this, it's too stupid. The space makes a new loveton. So every time the positron hits the electron, somewhere else in space, a little lovetron pops out. I mean, this is worse than Christianity. This is worse than whatever, Mohammed's snake demons. I mean, this is so fucking bad. I mean, it's a shitty religion. Ugh. Just terrible. Awful. Grotesque. If you could be dropped into a black hole, would you go for it? Well, look, a black hole is just a neutron star, technically, right? It's still matter. You can only put you can consolidate the space that matter takes up, and that's what a neutron star basically is. It's just electrons and protons perfectly arranged so they're really close to each other, so they're really dense and really magnetic. That's all they are. It's just charge. It's just electrons and protons. Neutrons are just electrons and protons. So I would argue that, yeah, okay, you're just saying being dropped into a strong gravity well. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, you'll accelerate at a velocity, and then you'll crash into the matter. The matter's got to be somewhere. I mean, this whole idea that, I mean, okay, maybe you'll do this stretching thing while you're falling because the gravity is so intense it's going to pull your feet slower than it's going to, it's going to pull your head slower than it's going to pull your feet. So how you get exactly killed, but you could argue that that happens no matter what velocity. Any acceleration at that rate is going to be g-forces that'll fuck you up anyway. Right? I mean, an intense acceleration is going to be a g-force, and your brain is going to be shit anyway. So you're just asking me, do I want to die by being jiggled to death or something? Well, it's probably not a bad way to die, right? You're probably dead in, if you're in like a 70-mile-an-hour car crash and your brain smashes against your skull, you're pretty much dead instantly. I mean, your brain stops working as a coherent consciousness creator. So, yeah, fine. Go ahead. Kill me that way. If you could be dropped... Oh, yeah, it's the same thing. yeah. So... there's probably more or less complicated ways to die, so you're just asking me, I would, guillotines are kind of, as ugly as a guillotine is, I'd kind of argue it's probably one of the most humane ways to kill somebody because, frankly, as soon as you stop the blood pressure to the brain, then there's no pressure. Whatever blood's in the brain just right out. There's no blood pressure. There's no consciousness. You're done. Everything just stops. We're doomed anyway. We can't escape the sun. Well, whatever. Obviously, it's not we're. There's no we doomed by the sun's expansion. But obviously, there's going to be things that will happen long before that happens, right? I mean, the fact is there's going to be a comet. We don't know who it is yet because we can't see the comets because they're way too far away and moving way too fast. And one of them is going to come out of nowhere and it's going to smack the Earth somewhere in the next million years. And it's going to be a big one. And it's going to fuck the atmosphere and fuck everything. And, you know, that'll probably be it. I mean, it'll be it for whatever complex life forms. Yeah, well, I mean, you could just make so many arguments about how, you know, we're not going to survive another 100 years in some ways as an intelligence on Earth. I mean, there'll be little pockets of it, but you know what I mean. It is the whole civilization thing is going to break down and it's going to get ugly and all that crap. And it doesn't seem like we have the character to survive. So yes, it would be. You know, it could come tomorrow. So don't be too hopeless. You know, it is a random dice throw. I mean, any second now. You know. Yeah, I haven't watched the TV for 20 years, so I stopped. My cable company screwed me over $20, and so I said, "You're not doing this to me anymore." I said, "Just fuck you." Pull the thing out of my house. And I never put it back in again. So there was a point where I just was done. And then the internet showed up, and that saved the day. So I lived like 5 years with no TV, and then the internet showed up, and everything was okay anyway. Something like that. But I did have like videotapes and stuff. You know, I didn't rent them, but I had copied movies and different things off the TV. So it wasn't like I didn't have any visual entertainment. It's just I just stopped doing the watch the news, watch this, I used to watch C-SPAN, all that kind of crap, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I said, wow, look how much free time I have. It was like I stopped doing that shit. And so it did enhance my intellectual life in the sense that I found better things to watch or do with my time. Well, it can stop a comet, but I'm just saying I don't think we're ever going to invest in the technology necessary. You have to be able to react so fast. You know, you might have like 5 hours notice or something, you know. So, you know, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's, you know, who knows? I'm like just saying, I mean, thinking about the human race existing for 10,000 years from now or, you know, 100,000 years from now, you know, it's very hard to figure out how it would be organized into anything but a bunch of people plugged into the jerk-off machine. You know, we're not going to be doing anything anymore. We're all just going to gravitate to, you know, the hedonism. So I just don't think you can really, I don't think you can appreciate that there really isn't going to be incentive for people to do work anymore when they have the choice to just plug into the get you off machine. You know, it's not likely. How would you diagnose? There's no point in diagnosing anxiety. It's obviously a condition disorder. So you could compare it to like vertigo or some other psycho reaction, right? I mean, I have some vertigo now. I never had vertigo. It happened about, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And it's so bizarre because, right, I even look at a picture of distance and I start getting nauseous. You know, it doesn't take much to get me woozy. And you're saying, how's my brain doing that? It's just a picture. It's not even the real thing. It's not like I'm really at the Grand Canyon looking over the rail. when I was a kid, I was at the Grand Canyon. I actually walked on the metal fence, you know, just to be a show off. Because I had no fear of heights when I was a kid. I could just, you know, I could climb the tallest tree and be wobbling all over the place. Didn't bother, you know. Well, anyway, so I compare it to that. I mean, I have a conditioned disorder. Somehow my brain reacts in this completely useless way, okay, where I just functionally break down, where I'm just disoriented and nauseous and uncomfortable when I really shouldn't be. There's nothing here to harm me, but it's clear the signal's going into my brain, and my brain's making an image of falling down a cavern kind of out of it. Somehow it's thinking it, it's seeing it, and I don't see it, right? I don't see the problem, but somehow my brain's reacting as if there's a problem. So what do you call that? I mean, it's hard to diagnose that. It's a conditioned disorder. My brain is faggoty. You know, it's you know, misidentified. It's thinks it's a girl. However you want to, you know what I'm saying? It's a similar kind of disorder. It doesn't react the standard way, okay, to a circumstance. It's a non-standard reaction, and it's, you know, you could call it inappropriate, you could call it queer, you could call it perverted, you could call it strange, you could call it, doesn't matter. It's broken. It's not useful. Let's just put it that way. It's not a useful way of reacting. But I really don't want to talk about it. Sorry. I mean, it's really, you know, I mean, any personal information you put on the internet, it's just fodder for the fucking assholes to use against you. So there's just no point. If you blew the comet up, it would just scatter into pieces. Yeah, I know, but the fact is you can scatter it so it misses you. You know, if you put enough energy in, you can create the directions. So again, it's about directions. You know, you can take the laser beam and you can cause it to diffract enough where most of it misses you. But yeah, it's a real technical challenge. I mean, comets aren't small. I mean, if it's a 10-mile comet, that's a lot of crap to, you know, and it's a lot of momentum heading right for you. So it's a lot to deflect. You have to put a lot of energy in to cause that energy to be canceled by deflections. Alright, so that's probably enough. Yeah, it's getting late. Well, might as well go 3 hours, right? Might as well make it a round number. Alright, so we'll give you another 7 minutes or so. What actual time is it? Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's always longer than I think I'm going to go. I say, oh, let's put in an hour. And, you know, just cascades and keeps going and going. 10 hours later, you're like, what the fuck did I do that for? It's actually comfortable here, but you know, I've been using the stove in the basement to, you know, supplement the heat just because oil prices are just still way too high. So we've been using the gas to heat instead of the oil, well, whatever. So it's been nice for me in the basement. It's been warmer than I usually, this winter's been less unpleasant. And, but yeah, I still have to, you know, I like it warm, you know, so even when it's 70 degrees, I'm still, you know, wearing some kind of, you know, sweater or something. That's cold for me. I'm comfortable at like 80. Yeah, none of your business where I live. I live in New Jersey. That's all you're going to get. I used to live in Mendham. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, part of this is that's a little frustrating that you can't be yourself on the internet anymore. without people just really trying to invade your privacy and fuck with your personal life. And it's really sad, because part of me just wants to be honest and just talk about my life and what happens in it. And there's lots of interesting little things, but you really just can't do it, because one of these assholes is going to use it against you. They're going to call your neighbor or do some other kind of bizarre shit. It's disgusting. Yeah, well, so cheap is kind of a weird language, but whatever. I'd say that gas is probably still twice as efficient, but prices here for gas have gone up, so they're exploiting it. The higher oil prices. So I'm not quite sure what the BTU efficiency of gas is compared to oil now. But oil prices, for refined product, they're way outrageous. They shouldn't be. They should be. Oil should be down. Barrel of oil is below $80 now, right? Somewhere in there. And at that price, a gallon of heating oil should be $2.50 or something like that, and it's still $3.50 here. I mean, there's no excuse for it. They're just exploiting the price increase, and they're just slowly being required to lower the prices, but they're just doing it as slow as possible. There's not enough competition to force the issue quicker. The oil companies will probably have record profits this year. But every time there's a oil crisis, the oil companies make out huge. Yeah, I got some new vaping things because my old one finally broke. And so I just got these little pods, these little things you fill up with your juice, and so it's just a standby to get by kind of thing. And they're supposed to put them into a thing with a battery and all that crap, but fuck that. I just throw the 3.7 volts into the bottom and smoke it that way. Do it as cheap as possible. It won't run out. We won't be able to access it. I wonder what the hell that is. Oh, does the Earth run out of oil? Well, it's already, the argument is that there was a peak, right? There's a peak where you still have more oil, the halfway mark. So the argument is that we pretty much reached the halfway mark. We've used up half the accessible oil. And so the downside is we still got a big giant, 50 years left of accessible oil, but the rest of it's got a dirty, and it's like coal. It's almost not worth it because it's so dirty, the oil that's left. So, but that's the point. There's a ton of coal and there's a ton of other stuff. We just have to be able to process it in a way where we can get the energy out without all the dirt. And so there might be a technical solution where they actually might have something actually clean, like clean coal, but it would be economically clean. So it's like nuclear. It's like anything else. There's the waste products, there's the engineering, and you just got to find a way to do it where you don't make catastrophic mistakes with the nuclear, right? The nuclear wins if you don't make catastrophic mistakes. Clearly, we've shown with Fukushima and, 3 Mile Island and, the one in Russia, Chernobyl, that we make catastrophic mistakes. So, we can't do nuclear because we're too vulnerable to catastrophic mistakes. And so coal, there's lots of coal, and it's just getting the sulfur out of it and the other crap that comes with it. And maybe they'll come up with eventually some way to do that, where they can make the coal clean enough. where it's competes with the other alternative sources. So yeah, we're not really running out of energy. Obviously, we're not going to run out of wind and the tidal stuff might get even better just because we're fucking up the environment enough that some of that shit might be part of the infrastructure we build to stop the erosion. So you could do both jobs with one thing. You could build these tidal walls that where you can gain all this energy, and it was also save all your coastal properties. So it could be a win-win thing. But we won't do any of that because all of that requires planning ahead. And nobody wants to make the future better. They just want to make the present better. Alright, it won't run out. We won't be able to access it. Well, it's the same thing as running out, I think. So, frankly, it will cost more energy to get the oil than what it's worth. Well, it'll cost more in terms of environmental damage, right? I mean, the fact is how many earthquakes can you afford to cause? So, doing fracking in California, you almost have to say, gee, that is just asking for it, isn't it? Aren't you just asking for like $1 trillion earthquake? Alright, I'll send you some cigarette money this week. Well, that's nice of you. I do get cigarettes now and then, and I really do enjoy them, I have to say. And I shouldn't, but I do. But it's bad, so. It's bad, okay? Yeah, real cigarettes are bad. But, man, they're still so much better than a vaped cigarette. But whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to keep myself sane, and that's it. Just keep the edge from getting too edgy. But yeah, I do, so there's people who send me, $10 here and $20 there, and, it's really very nice, and, it does, my life is improved, because I'm not desperately as poor as I would be. But there are other, it's like I feel bad, Snake Plisskenus is such an asshole, but man, he's struggling with this whole, like he just can't really, he's in a terrible position, right? Because he's 40 plus years old, and now he has to start all over again, and and he can't start over with some great career. He can't just walk into a place and get a $40,000 a year job and all that kind of crap, and and he's gotten so nutty that he can't really even handle a job that isn't controllable, where he can control his hours and control his mission, where he isn't a servant to a process, because he just can't do processes anymore. He can't deal with people, and he can't deal with all the bullshit you have to deal with to be a salary slave. And I mean, I'm fortunate that I survived that period in my life, and but it wasn't easy. I had to do it on, no money and living. And, I didn't have heat for years. I didn't, I lived a very difficult existence. But so I feel bad for so many people, and so I feel a little bit. I mean, it's almost, I should say to Zach, don't send me money, send somebody else who's in worse shape money. That's very against my own interest, but it's like, fuck. I mean, it sucks that, it sucks that there's so much wrong, and there's so much hardship and pain, and we're just so powerless to do anything about it. It just sucks. Yeah, all this banning stuff is just so stupid. I mean, you don't. They're addicts, you retards. And what's the difference? I mean, really, what are you talking? They're going to die anyway. I mean, what are you saving them for? Okay, so they don't get lung cancer at 65, they get, pancreatic cancer at 67. I mean, fuck this. It's just so stupid. I watched over 5,000 hours of the Sunday philosophy. I can do. I don't know what that means. But yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, I've made over 5,000 hours, so I know how much work that is. Just because it's probably you know as much work to listen as it is to talk, almost. Anyway, um, yeah, I never smoked menthols. I have to admit, I liked menthol cigarettes, but I could automatically say, you just knew this can't be good for you. It just, you know what I mean? It's like almost the cigar thing. You're just like, oh, no, there's something about this that is worse for you. I mean, you can just feel it. And menthol just automatically felt to me like, this is like, inhaling gasoline or something. This is just stupid. So I really shouldn't do that. But that's just a personal thing. Like I said, I do like menthol. In this vaping thing, they have tons of flavors. I don't flavor anything, just because I'm too cheap. Because some of the flavors are really quite nice. And so, but yeah, it really is just about the nicotine for me. So, I mean, it's like, I just couldn't care less. I don't care what it tastes like. I don't care how harsh it is. As long as it's nicotine. But I hate how much time it wastes in my life just because, I inhale it and then you have to wait for a little bit because the vaping thing just takes a little bit longer for it to get into your brain and you say, oh yeah, I finally have enough. Where cigarettes, it's like, yeah, it just happens. You don't have to wait for it, Well, for years I smoked Winston's, but I really got used to Pall Malls, and I'd almost say I like Pall Malls better. But 100s, always buy the long ones. Yeah, so it's kind of funny that I wasn't glued to a brand, but yeah, I was a Winston smoker. I mean, that's what I smoked for 40 years. And then the Pall Malls, after the whole cigarette lawsuit crap, the Pall Malls were like $3 cheaper. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll smoke Pall Malls now. And they were fine. They really were. Yeah, I just don't. Like I said, I don't see the point in banning shit. It's just they ought to if they're going to play the game and say we're doing this to save people, well then ban ice cream, there's a ton of things killing people, and they're not banning any of that shit. So it's just a hypocrisy. They're just picking on the minorities, picking on the people that can be exploited. And most importantly, picking on people who they can tax and steal money from. So it's just extortion for the bills, the dollars. They don't care about kids. They just care about a source of revenue. It's just grotesquely silly. No, I don't do bands, I don't think. I don't even know what the difference between 80s and 90s, all blends together, really. I mean, the 90s were like the end of the headbangers, right? Or metalheads, whatever you used to call them. And so the 80s would be like, that was big metal-y crap. Lita Ford popped into my head. Yeah, that was good stuff. The Bangles and Bananarama, and yeah, that was all good. But yeah, I always liked the chick bands much better. I mean, I really wasn't a guy song person. I could appreciate that kind of stuff, but I liked sad songs and ballads and all that kind of crap. It's like Cheap Trick has one song that I can stand, and that's The Flame or something. And it's just because it's it's one of those heartbreak kind of songs. So that's what I always gravitated to. I wasn't most stuff just sounded like noise. But I have to admit, yeah, I was always the only albums I ever bought were chick bands, or like Linda Ronstadt. I think that was the first time I ever bought a record. So I didn't buy a record too often, but I probably only bought 2 or 3 in my whole life. That's how much of a non-music could give a shit person I was. But I did actually take my own money, my own little newspaper money, and I paid whatever $5 for a Linda Ronstadt album. And I played it over and over and over and over. As I sat in my basement, like now. But I was surrounded by fish tanks. I had fish tanks when I was a kid. And, with snakes in them and frogs and fish. And so I had a little couch, and I'd sit on my couch and play my Linda Ronstadt and just think about how much I hated life and just kind of wallow in a little bit of self-pity. But I also felt good. It was just very comfortable. I could just sit and listen to my music and just get away from the real world. And I have to admit, in hindsight, those were some of the best times of my life. Alice, yeah, I wouldn't know who that is. Alice in Chains. Yeah, ABBA was, I wasn't like Dancing Queen ABBA. I was, Fernando ABBA and My Love, My Life ABBA and, that kind of stuff. I could, I listened, going to work, it was just so, you could just close the windows, in the car, and it was just like you could just, it was so relaxing for me. And I really wasn't, frankly, I couldn't care less about lyrics. It was like I didn't know the lyrics to anything. I thought Fleetwood Mac, when they had a song, White Winged Dove, right? I thought it was One Winged Dove. So I was thinking, this is kind of a cool song about, the whole idea of a dove with only, with its wing broken and the whole peace thing with the broken wing. I mean, that sort of made sense to me. But yeah, that's what I thought they were saying. I mean, I really didn't, like I said, I wasn't a music file. Hey, Amanda. Yes. Well, I could stay a little longer just for Amanda. $3:12. I stayed. Oh wow! I didn't think I. Boy, that 10 minutes was 20 minutes long. Shit. Time dilation, I guess. Whatever. I am what I am. Yeah. How am I? Just whatever. I'm leaning sideways, but I'm trying to make it straight ahead. Same old, same old. Really isn't. I mean, every day is a new adventure, but it just is all sideways, right? Just you lose some and you gain some. And I guess over time you do lose more than you gain, so I have to admit it's discouraging. But blah, 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 blah. I will endeavor to persevere in such. Until that is no longer possible, I guess. But yeah, when you were talking about the cigarette thing, the thing that really pissed me off is when eBay, eBay won't let you buy any of this crap anymore. And it was such a bargain. You could, you could get shit from China so cheap. The smoking crap, the little atomizers, and that really pissed me off. It's bad enough, you can't smoke, but it's, even, they're trying to force you back into cigarettes by telling you vaping is somehow killing you too, which is just such horse shit. I mean, they have so little evidence against vaping, right? They have like 6 people who've had a bad reaction in some way. 6? I mean, out of all the millions of people that have been vaping for years now, they have 6 people with a negative reaction. 6. It's just, you're just like, what the fuck? How silly can this get? I mean, it's almost like you almost want to recommend vaping because it seems like people survive it so well that they can't find any statistical correlation between it killing people. It kills people so badly that it's almost like you should recommend it to people. It's like almost everything on Earth could be found to have killed more, like this marker. It's probably statistically there's more people, like babies, that have been killed or something by these markers than have been killed by vaping. It's just so funny. I mean, it's just another one of the silly ironies of this whole existence on this moronic planet. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not sure whether doing the live thing is worth the trouble, but we'll see. I mean, the trouble of all the distracting blah 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 blah. Tonight wasn't too bad. No real trolls or anything, so went okay. And you really have to have that perfect balance. You have to have not too many people, so the shit isn't flying, and and the right people. It just is a tricky thing. But yeah, 3 hours is and so it also gets to be that it's all scattered. You're not on one subject. It's nothing's very concise and nailed down. And then you waste some really good points you make about something. You'll say something really good, but here it is in a pile of 3-hour video. There's one little 5-minute thing, and it's like, I don't want to go to the trouble extracting that. So it's kind of a weird thing. Yeah, I just I can't decide whether it's a positive mental experience or a negative one. I'm in between. I mean, I don't know whether it's doing my thought process, whether the interaction is helpful or just distracting. But we'll see. I mean, it's obviously not bad, and it's not bad enough that I've run away from doing it. So we'll see how it goes. I like that the videos are still pretty good quality now. I mean, the real downside in the past is the quality of the video really wasn't very good. So it's gotten much better. So it's really not an issue. It's too bad though they don't let you do the room thing, where you could just have another person, to talk to without using some other mechanism. Because yeah, it'd be good to be able to just bring people into the conversation. Alright, 2-minute warning. So somebody's got to type something or I'm going this time for good, for real. Probably going for real anyway, but we'll see how it goes. Let's see, all the newer stuff looks great, but yes, it's so sad that they've destroyed so much of the live room stuff. Yes. It is a bit of a bummer. So good to see you're still here, Merker guy. I hadn't seen you comment for a while, so I figured maybe I pissed you off a little too much. But, yeah, so it's good you're not too pissed off. Likewise and such. So yes, you were suitably relevant in most of your commenting. Thank you. And so till the next time and all that crap. My newest video, Gary, includes a bit of mini doc about some of your past. Gary. I don't know what that means, mini doc. Okay, I'll have to go see that. It includes a bit of a mini doc about some of our, okay. Yeah, well, obviously there's so much you have to set straight because so many people are just such lousy liars. I mean, everything's just, with the, it's just so ironic, when I think back to the Amazing Atheist video, right? I mean, so I did a video about child exploitation, and I conceded up front an argument, which is obviously men are attracted to pretty young things. It's just a fact. And yes, a rational, responsible adult recognizes the vulnerability of children and the destiny of people and how you can fuck up their destiny and all that kind of crap, and they restrain themselves from creating imbalanced relationships and all this other crap. So they know it's just not practical, it doesn't work, and it's kind of overtly unethical to play with somebody else's destiny. So it's a kind of a complex argument, but it's the argument. And so the real subject is that I was arguing against lowering the age of consent, right? So I'm making a video arguing that no, you should not make the age of consent lower. Because somebody was arguing it should be, whatever, 13 or 12 or something. And I was saying, fuck you, it's stupid. And they labeled me an advocate for child molestation, And it's just so like, what the fuck? Are you people insane? Oh, so it just, there's no, people are just such scum. Oh, it's, it's just disgustingly stupid. You can't have an honest conversation, without them just missing the conditions you put on a statement. It's like, I'm pro-war. Well, yes, if the war is with Adolf Hitler. Not if the war is with, butterflies. It's just too stupid. Okay. So, anyway, I probably shouldn't even have thrown that in. Well, anyway. Because, they'll pervert that into some statement I didn't make. Just, But this is the internet that I have to keep just telling myself. This is the world that exists. You gotta accept this is the price you have to pay. So blah blah blah. Buck up, and endeavor to persevere. So that's what I will do. So anyway, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. This has been a draft science and draftphysics.com, and of course debatephysics.com, when we can find somebody who likes to debate. Yeah, so anyway, so I started this video with a little clip of the Ian Gosling guy, and we'll see if he's can stay on the subject and counter argue the statements I have made regarding the fallacious origin and suspicious perpetuation of the kinetic energy formulae. Anyway, so till the next time and such. Blah 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 blah. So what button do I hit? I have to decide. Maybe I'll hit this one and see what happens.